Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin. If you would please come in and take your seats. We have reached the hour of 7 o'clock. I do not have to declare that we have a quorum present because we actually have a zero quorum, and I know that there is more than nobody here. So I will call this meeting to order. I will ask the town clerk to read the posting of the warrant.
You are hereby directed to serve this warrant by posting attested copies thereon on or before Friday, February 15, 2019, in at least one public place in each precinct within the town, and by publishing a copy of the warrant on or before March 7, 2019. Hereof fail not, and make sure do return. Did you write this? No. This warrant with your doings thereon, the town clerk of the time and place of said meeting given under our hands the 12th day of February in the year 2019, signed by the Wareham Board of Selectmen.
And I will waive the reading of the articles.
That's it, right?
Did you read the minutes?
Yes, I did.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to our new town clerk, Michelle Bissonette.
Thank you, Claire.
Okay, I will now ask you to stand for the posting of the colors and the salute to the flag.
Forward.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing. I would ask for a moment of silence in memory of some very great people who have served our town over the years. Mr. William Gay, who worked as superintendent for the Onset Water Department and served as a captain on the Onset Fire Department for many, many years before retiring. Mr. Charles Maxim, who was employed by the town of Wareham in the Municipal Maintenance Department as a general foreman and heavy equipment operator, and was a member of the Onset Fire Department and the Wareham Forestry Department. Mary Crowley. Mary was a member of the Wareham Economic and Development Industrial Commission, as well as a very well-known realtor in town. Attorney George C. Dekas. Attorney Dekas was active in the local restoration and preservation, and as chairman of the Wareham Historical Society, helped to restore the Captain John Kendrick Museum in Wareham, and along with his sister, preserved the Alden Bessie House overlooking Wareham Harbor. He served as chair of the Planning Board, was on the Charter Commission, the Historic District Commission, and the 250th Anniversary Committee. Joan Powelatis. Joan was a member of the Wareham Friends of Veterans, for which she was key to establishing the Heroes Circle Monument at the National Cemetery in Bourne. She was treasurer of the Friends of the Wareham Library. Judith Wallace. Judith worked as an administrative assistant for the police department for many years. Richard Glass. Richard served on the Wareham Police Department for several years. And lastly, George Maxim Sr., who was a special police officer on the Wareham Police Force. We've lost very...
Madam Clerk, I bring your indulgence, Florence Byron, member of our town.
and Florence Byron, who was very active in our town. If we may take a moment to remember them and all that they did for the town of Wareham and all that they gave to help Wareham become a better place. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And I'd like to thank the Junior ROTC for presenting their colors. And a big thank you to the Wareham Junior ROTC. You may be seated. I'd like to introduce our members who are up on stage. I just introduced to you our new town clerk, Michelle Bissonette. We have to my right, town council, Mr. Richard Bowen, our town administrator, Mr. Derek Sullivan, our chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Patrick Tropiano, Selectman Mary Bruce, Selectman Titlebaum, Selectman Slavin, and our newest member to the Board of Selectmen, Jim Muniz. After Jim, there is our deputy moderator, Joe Ashley, and then we have the Finance Committee, Mr. David Hurd, Mr. Bernie Pigeon, Dominic Camarado, Joan Fonts, Pat Rumney, Jerry Stefanski, Glenn Lawrence, and Mr. Tom Worthen, who has come back to serve another term on the Finance Committee. He was on for 2 terms and has come back for another term. So thank you all for being here tonight. I have just a few introductory comments. The duties of the moderator and the procedures of town meeting not specifically provided for by law are determined by the rules contained in the 75th edition of Robert's Rules of Order, town meeting time, town meeting tradition, and the rules set forth by the moderator, who under Mass General Law gets to regulate the meeting. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 15, whenever there's a 2/3 vote required by statute, a vote may be declared by the moderator and not counted. However, if 7 or more voting members stand to doubt that, we will take a hand count. In order to vote, you must remain seated. Please be sure to hold your cards up high. Don't put them down until the tellers have done your row and tell you that they're through. Don't tear them in half. Don't write on them. Don't share them because we do reuse them afterwards, so we would appreciate getting them back. The warrant, which was duly posted in every precinct, is our agenda for tonight's town meeting. And town meeting doesn't come to an end until we finish with all the agenda items. I will ask for a motion for each article. I want you to listen carefully because it may be somewhat different from what's printed in your FinCom handbook, but what we're voting on is going to be shown on the screen. So that is what we're actually taking a vote on. So it will be up there for you to see. It might be slightly different, so just be aware of that. Following the motion, I will ask the proponent of the article to speak to the article, and then I will ask the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee for their vote and their recommendation. Now, once we've done that, we open it up for comments from the voters. Please come down to a microphone and say your name so that the clerk can record it. That's just so that we have a record who actually spoke. I do ask that you be respectful and civil to one another. Please, no calling out, no comments from the peanut gallery that are inappropriate would be appreciated. Our town meeting has, for as long as I've attended town meeting, has allowed the proponent 5 minutes to present their article and everyone else 2 minutes. So I would ask if you are willing to carry on that tradition, and if so, please say aye. All those opposed? We will go with our tradition. Now, the moderator presides and regulates the meeting and decides all questions of order. We do our articles through the lottery, and they will come up however that they're pulled. So amendments can be offered to any article that's on the floor, and to offer an amendment, I do ask that you have something in writing so that we have it for the record. Now, reconsideration is only accepted if we have new information that hasn't been available and wasn't brought back. It must be made by a member who voted on the prevailing side, and it must be seconded, and it is debatable. Now, again, I want to make sure that all our non-voters are in this section of the room. Now, we do have a photo policy. Only the press are allowed to take photographs. They have asked permission. I have given it to them. So there's no photography during town meeting. There's no photography, especially during any votes taken. If we need to leave the auditorium, please use this door that you came in. Do not go out the back door, the right-hand door, and that's to protect the integrity of being checked in so that we know that you as a voter have been checked in and are a registered voter. So if you would put your cell phones on silent, I'd appreciate that. I just want to make one quick announcement, something that I'm hoping we will be able to do in the fall, and that's electronic voting. We have met with a gentleman from a company. There are several companies out there that we've investigated. Selectman Slavin and I and the town clerk will be attending the Linfield town meeting next week to see it actually in action. I have seen it. I have attended other towns that use electronic voting. I think it would be wonderful for this town. I hope that you'll also think it would be something that we should be doing. It protects someone from looking to see how you vote, and sometimes people are uncomfortable because they don't want to raise their hand and wonder, you know, is my neighbor watching me? So we are looking forward to trying this in the fall for our fall town meeting. So I'm sure that we will have more information in a couple of months and bring it forward that we are going to do it, you know, once we confirm everything, but that's our plan, that we're going to give electronic voting a try. So before we begin, our town charter states that all department heads have to attend the sessions of each town meeting for the purpose of providing town meeting with information that might be pertinent to warrant articles. So I'll call a roll call. Human Resource Director. Board of Health. Chief Assessing Officer. Community and Economic Development. Natural Resources Director. Council on Aging. Finance Director. Library. Water Pollution Control. Town Accountant. Information Management Technology. EMS. Procurement Officer. Inspectional Services. Municipal Maintenance. Planning. And our Police Department. Would the selectmen like to make any comments or address the body? Mr. Tropiano.
No, just quickly, I want to thank you all for coming this evening. You have no greater input into what goes on directly that affects you on your town level than right here at this town meeting. And I really thank you all for coming tonight on behalf of the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. Did the Finance Committee wish to address the body?
Yes, Madam Moderator. Excuse me. Thank you all for coming. We are experiencing a unique form of government that no longer occurs anyplace else in the United States. New England is that one place. We are unique. I want to welcome you all. This is an important event for us because this is where we spend the money. You go into coffee shops, et cetera, and they complain about where their money is spent and all. You have that opportunity here this evening, and those watching, to know where each dollar is going and make your own mind up as to where you want it to go. And I enjoy sharing everything with you. You're my friends and neighbors, and we do this together, and I want to thank you very much for coming again.
Thank you, Mr. Pigeon. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the other traditions that we have, even though that we take our warrant articles by lottery, is that we allow the Upper Cape Regional School budget to be our first article, and that's so Mr. Dutch can attend other meetings that he has. He represents 5 different towns and has to go to all those town meetings. So we will take up the Upper Cape budget as our first article, which is Article number 9, I believe. Mr. Dutch? Dominic, I think you need to pull your microphone a little closer.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate 3678385 as the share of the operating and capital cost of the Upper Cape Cod Regional Vocational Technical High School District for the fiscal year 2020, July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020.
I have a motion and a second. To speak to the article, Mr. Dutch.
Again, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present our budget to the Finance Committee earlier this year, as well as allowing me to be first. It's very much appreciated. Upper Cape Tech continues to be proud to represent Wareham as one of its 5 member towns and provide an education for students who may be looking for something very specific that we offer. We feel as though we have been of value to the town of Wareham for many, many years. Your representation on our school committee with Mr. Fichtenmeyer and Mr. Camerano is always well represented through their efforts and their support of the town. Our budget represents a 3.1% increase from last year for the district as a whole. And I, as always, appreciate your support.
Thank you. May I have the vote and recommendation of the Board of Selectmen?
The Board of Selectmen recommends approval of this article 500.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee voted 700.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on the Upper Cape Regional budget? Seeing no one standing, I will call for a vote. It requires a majority vote. You're voting on the Upper Cape to raise and appropriate $3,678,385 as the operating and capital cost of Upper Cape Regional. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dutch. Madam Clerk. Next one. Oh, wait a minute, I have a consent agenda. Okay, we're gonna, I have a consent agenda that we're gonna take care of. Okay, sometimes what we try to do is take some of the articles that are routine and come up year after year and put them into what's called the consent agenda. And generally, they don't have any questions or people aren't rising to talk about anything about them. So we have taken 4 articles which we think we can vote as one unit. So I'm going to take Article 2, 4, 18, and 16 in a consent agenda. So Article 4 is a housekeeping article. Article 2 is it has 4 parts, and it's housekeeping that we routinely do year after year. One portion of it authorizes the Board of Selectmen or the town administrator to handle administrative issues that come up, details that they need to handle. The second part is allows and authorizes the town treasurer collector to maintain a sufficient balance in the town accounts to avoid having a checkbook that doesn't balance. So, and then the next part of it complies with state law that certain bodies report to town meeting and give a report. And this, the 4th section is a housekeeping article to conform that the Mass Department of Environmental Protection, our septic program, which allows people who are having issues with their septic system to come in and borrow some money through redevelopment. So these are articles that come up every year. There's generally never any question on them. If you have a question, please say hold. So I've explained Article 2. Okay, Article 4. Article 4 is a housekeeping article that authorizes revolving funds that we set up year to year for every department. They have a cap on the revolving fund. It allows the departments to to pay for things that come up routinely, and the revolving fund is funded through either their department or different things. So that's a routine article that comes up year after year. Article 18 is a recurring article that annually allocates at least 10% of community preservation funding to open space, historical preservation, and affordable housing. And again, that is a routine article that comes up every single year. Article 16 is an article that deals with union negotiations, and there have been no contracts that have been settled, so there's not going to be any action on that one. So we have four articles in the consent agenda: Article 2, Article 4, Article 18, and Article 16. I didn't hear anybody that wants to hold any of those and pull them out, so I will accept a motion for... So I have a motion that the town approve Articles 2, 4, 18, and further that the town pass over Article 16. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Now, Madam Clerk, I think we could do one more. Article 17. Article 17 is Littleton Drive. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the town authorize the Board of Selectmen to convey real estate title to a parcel of land owned located at Littleton Drive containing 12.92 acres, more or less, as shown on lots 1 through 47 on Assessor's Map 56, excepting lots 6, 7, 44, and 45, as recorded in the Plymouth County Registry of Deeds, Book 4943, page 86, to the Wareham Redevelopment Authority.
I have a second to speak to the article.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. This is a former failed subdivision that was given over to the town for taxes. It's something we've been looking at for a few years and now feel we'd like to bring it forward, more specifically looking at such items as affordable senior housing for it.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Board of Selectmen?
The Board of Selectmen recommended approval of this Article 302, the two abstaining votes being myself and Peter Teitelbaum, because we are both on the Redevelopment Authority.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee recommends approval of this Article 800. For recommendation, the town meeting adopted the creation of the Wareham Redevelopment Authority specifically to focus on causing dormant town-owned properties to return to the tax rolls. One of the most obvious successes would be Tremont Nail. We may still own the property, but it's beginning to generate some revenue which can support the development of other sites in town and make the whole town more attractive to investors and residents. Thank you.
Is there anything further to be said on Article 17? Mr. Muniz?
My name's Jim Manise, precinct 4.
Going to use the mic, Jim.
Here we go. Can you hear me now?
You may need to, yeah.
Here we go, huh? Got my bifocals on, so it's kind of a... I'm wondering if we could clarify this a little bit, and could we actually state to create over 55 years of age housing, of which 40% be considered senior housing? 60-plus years of age that will be permanently deed restricted, meeting affordable housing inventory guidelines and qualifications. Would you accept that as a friendly amendment?
I'm sorry, let me see it. Okay, Mr. Muniz is asking to make an amendment to convey real estate title to a parcel of town-owned land located at Littleton Drive containing 12.92 acres more or less, shown as lots 1 through 47 on basically what's on the screen, but adding to create over 55 years of age housing, of which at least 40% will be considered senior housing, 60-plus years of age that will be permanently deed restricted, meeting affordable housing inventory guidelines and qualifications. Mr. Muniz, I think it's outside the scope. I don't think that we've had enough public notice that that was the intent of this article.
I'd like to make a motion for further study until we can discuss this in a more robust fashion with other qualified town agencies, the Wareham Affordable Housing Trust, along with the Redevelopment Authority, maybe the Wareham Housing Authority. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a second to Mr. Muniz's amendment for further study? I have a second to Mr. Muniz to speak to your amendment for further study.
Well, I'm not against it. I'd just like to see a little more language clarifying it. As a redevelopment authority, is a quasi-public agency who, once the property is turned over to them, has all control of said property to do with which they'd like. I just would like to see it a little more qualified in the wording of the articles and bring it back in the fall stating such, and I'd be more than happy to support it. But just being open-ended with no direction, I'm kind of lacking to support it. I'm probably in a minority, but that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. To speak to the amendment and the amendment only, I think, Mrs. Slavin, did you want to speak to the amendment? No. Mr. Titlebaum?
Yes, while I can appreciate Mr. Muniz's desire, perhaps for more specific language, if anybody would like to, they can go through the minutes of the Redevelopment Authority. The only discussions regarding this property have all taken place in the context of developing senior affordable housing out there. I would suggest that having offered that up through our town administrator, who's also on the Redevelopment Authority, as what our intended goal is, me stating it as the chairman of the Redevelopment Authority to you tonight, that if we were to go do something different with the land, you'd have our heads the next time you had an opportunity to cut them off. So I'd suggest that we just move ahead with this. The Affordable Housing Trust hasn't met for almost a year. We've got $150,000 approximately locked up. Nobody has shown any interest in getting the money. We most recently have seen the housing production plan, which is something that has to be done every 5 years or so, is being done by an intern in the planning department because we haven't met actually to spend money to hire the same expert we had the last time do it. That body is substantially moribund. I had actually discussed with Selectman Slavin a while back the possibility of disbanding it because I didn't think it was doing anything, and kicking the money over to the Community Preservation Affordable Housing Reserve. And he said we should only keep it alive so that we might remain eligible for some state grants. So I would ask the body to defeat the amendment and get back to the main motion.
Is there anything further to be said on the amendment? Seeing no one standing, I will call for a vote on the amendment for further study. It requires a majority vote. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The amendment fails. We're going to come back. Sandy, you'll be the first. We have a special town meeting that opens at 7:30. So we will come back to this article and come back to it as it is on the warrant. So we'll come back to 17. So we're going to go to the special town meeting, which is called for 7:30. If I could have the town clerk read the posting of the special.
You are hereby directed to serve this warrant by posting attested copies thereof on or before Friday, March 22nd, 2019, in at least one public place in each precinct within the town, and by publishing a copy of the warrant on or before April 4th, 2019. Hereof fail not, and make sure due return of this warrant with your doings thereon to the town clerk of the time and place of said meeting, given under our hands this 19th day of March in the year of 2019.
Thank you. I will waive the reading. The special town meeting should be about halfway through your Finance Committee report. Again, we have a consent agenda that we could take up a couple of articles here. I'm looking at Article 5, which is a solar pilot. The selectmen have negotiated or are negotiating contracts with some solar farms in town that are being built, and this is to give them a payment in lieu of taxes called a pilot. It will net the town, I believe, about $259,000 a year, Mr. Sullivan?
Yeah, it's year one, 259,000, 2.5% increase thereafter, for a total amount of payments over the 20 years of $6,616,066.32, and that's on the personal property. The land is still taxed separately.
The second article that I believe we could put in a consent agenda is Article number 6, which is the PEG access receipts to Wareham Community TV. When Comcast and Verizon turn money to the town for our local TV station, it goes into the general fund, and then the general fund has to pay it out to community TV. So this is something that happens every year. It's just a transfer of money that comes in from Verizon and Comcast and then goes back out to our community television. Article 8 is to rescind prior year bond authorizations, and this is to rescind authorization of bonds for projects that were never completed. So it's just to rescind the action of giving authorization to borrow money that just never happened. Article 12 is name the onset pier in honor of Harry C. Bessie. This was a petition article. The petitioner has met with our officials, and they've come to an agreement that they'll put up a monument of some sort, and so his motion is going to be to withdraw this article. So we have 4 articles, Article 5, 6, 8, and 12. Hearing no one asked to hold them, I will call for a motion. I have a motion to move in a second on the consent agenda. Second. It requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes unanimously. So now we're on the special, if you will. Article 1? Article 1 is actually, our budget transfers in the special. So may I have a motion on Article 1, please?
Article 1, I move that the town approve the following transfers within the budget lines as approved in Article 7 of the 2018 Spring Annual Town Meeting. Would you like me to read each line?
Madam Moderator, I'm going to go through them. If you don't mind, maybe we can save some time that way.
So I will waive the reading of each line and let our town administrator go through them.
Yeah, it's actually up on the screen as well. Do I have a second? Second. To speak to Article 1?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The first item you'll see is A, and it lists 6 transfers to the police department that total $234,000 to the salary line. The police department has been hit with a few retirements, some long-term injuries. When you think about the costs involved with the search, like the young girl Lily that was lost, and when you have incidents where you have people threatening to blow up an entire section of our community, that costs a lot of money that's unanticipated. The chief and his staff work very hard to stay within the budget, and we've had multiple meetings, so I appreciate all their help on this. And we'll be transferring from medical insurance. The $100,000 transfer will leave a balance of $7,717,242. The transfer from the general insurance is $5,000, which will leave a balance of $495,000. Life insurance, reduction of $5,000, which will leave a balance of $25,000. The unemployment line, $50,000 reduction, which will leave a balance of $150,000. The workers' compensation line, a reduction of $40,000 for the transfer, which will leave a balance of $650,000. And police expenses, reduction of $34,000, which will leave a balance of $335,984. When the transfer goes over to the police salary line, again, it's a $234,000 transfer. Their new salary line will be $5,096,745. B is from the town accountant salary line to the MIS salaries, and that's a $514 transfer. That's just what we're projecting. Town clerk, reduction of $6,200 to the selectmen salaries, which would make the new salary line $69,520. And just for you that don't know, that's not the Board of Selectmen. They do not get paid. That's for the staff members within that department. And we have one long-term staff member, Ms. Wilson, who's retiring this June, and that will be a big loss to the department, so we'll certainly miss all her hard work. The next item would be we're looking at transfer from the library salaries to the town planning salaries of $2,000, and that would make their new salary line $230,037. And then we've got $20,000 worth of transfers to municipal maintenance. And one of the things we were hit with this year was our insurance inspections and state inspections, causing us to have to spend approximately $15,000 on repairs and upgrades that were unanticipated. And also, when we were going with trying to do professional services on Smith Avenue and Pilgrim, we tried to bring in front of the Conservation Commission a project as part of the original Pilgrim Avenue project, but unfortunately, it was determined we needed to do another notice of intent, which cost us $5,000 worth of engineering. So that is all the transfers, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have the vote and recommendation of the Board of Selectmen?
The Board of Selectmen recommends approval of this article 500.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee recommends approval of this Article 700. And these budgets are housekeeping items which are routinely included in the special town meeting warrant to allow for rebalancing the budgets in mid-year, as our town administrator explained. We urge you approve this.
Is there anything further to be said on Article 1? Seeing no one standing, I will call for a vote. The motion before you is to approve the transfers within the budget lines as is on the screen. It requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous. What is it? 10. Article 10. Article 10 is new housing units at Agawam Village. May I have a motion, please?
Yes, Madam Moderator. I move to approve as printed in the warrant for the new housing at Agawam Village.
Do I have a second? Have a second to speak to the article? Gentleman on my left.
Just for clarification,
I think the microphone is off. Could we turn that? No, don't knock on it, please. I think it's on now.
Is it on now?
Yep, you just have to get a little close to it.
There you go. Good, good. Is that all right now? No.
Testing, testing.
Okay, all right. First, just for some clarity,
Please state your name.
Robert Powell-Latest, Chairman of the Wareham Housing Authority.
You need to speak into the microphone, Mr. Powell-Latest.
All right, Robert Powell-Latest, Chairman of the Wareham Housing Authority. Just for point of clarification, in the book, it indicates that,
We can't hear you.
Okay.
You've got to get really close to the microphone.
all right. Good.
It's on.
How's that, all right?
Nope, speak a little louder.
Is that okay?
Yeah, better.
Good. All right, here we go. Again, just to clarify some of the information rendered by the finance.
No, we still can't hear you. You've got to get really up close and you have to really project your voice.
Just to clarify the points in the warrant indicated by the finance committee.
We can't hear you, Mr. Powell-Latest. You've got to really,
Can you hear me now?
no, get real close.
Can you hear me now?
No.
It's almost
You got to talk louder.
right on it. Hello?
Really project your voice, Mr. Powell-Latest.
Check.
Can I just, when I read the motion?
How's this?
say this?
Better?
Yeah, just say it.
Okay, for clarification, in the warrant, the finance committee indicated we have funded new roofs at Agawam. That's not accurate. This project has been ready for several years. This year, it's been downsized from 6 to 4 units. If there were any presentation that we would have been invited to, we certainly would have gone. We went to the CPC and gave a thorough, comprehensive explanation for all this. And these 4 units will not be that of the Agawam Village. That's a colloquial term. The Agawam Village is the location. They will be sited within there, but they will be separate and distinct. Wareham Preservation, Affordable Housing, not part of any way, shape, or manner of Agawam Village. That is a separate state project. This project will not receive any state funding. It'll be self-sufficient and supported only by the rents. So that's an inaccurate statement. The Commonwealth of Mass does support additional housing at its housing authorities across the state. It's not funding any. We will be putting in 4 units, the cost of which will be $650,000, $600,000 of which is for the homes, construction of the 4 units. The other $50,000, $30,000 of it will be coming back to the town in terms of permits and fees, etc. And the other will be electrical, plumbing, sewer, water, hookups. So we urge you to support this small, modest request for 4 additional units of housing which the town can use. Thank you.
Thank you. On my right,
Yes, thank you. Sandy Slavin, Precinct 3. I am a co-chair of CPC, and this is the 4th time we've attempted to bring new housing units to this body. And this is the first time out of those 4 that the selectmen have voted a majority to allow you to vote on it. If we had had this back in 2016 when we first attempted it, these 4 units would have cost us $450,000. But we kept bringing it back, and they finally allowed this to go on the warrant to you for you to vote on it. I am disappointed that neither CPC or Housing Authority was asked to come before Finance Committee to talk about the presentation. So I was a little disappointed in the comments made by the Finance Committee in this document. We had no chance to talk to you about the process or the project. So I strongly recommend that the $650,000, that money has been put aside for housing, affordable housing projects, not spent, and I believe this is the time to spend it. I went back and looked at CPC records, and to date, CPC has only put in $230,000 into the Agawam Village for housing rehabilitation. So the $650,000 has been waiting in the wings, and I think it's time for us to spend it. Thank you.
thank you. To speak to the article, Mr. Titlebaum?
Yes, I think I have two questions here. One for Mrs. Slavin and her role as CPC co-chair. Who applied for this grant?
To answer the question, should you choose to?
The applicant was Wareham Housing Authority, Robert Politis, chair. The sponsoring organization, Wareham Housing Authority.
Thank you. I guess I'm a little confused then, because I thought I heard Mr. Paulides tell us that these housing units were going to be separate from Agawam Village, which I guess kind of begs the question, who's going to run them?
And may I respond? There was never, that comment was never part of any of the discussion with CPC. It was always for the Agawam Housing Authority.
Madam Moderator?
Just a minute, Mr. Paulides. Does that answer your question, Mr.
Not really.
Go ahead.
Perhaps Mr. Paulides can shed some light on this, because he did just tell us that these were going to be separate and apart, so I'm just wondering who's actually going to be the managing agent here.
What I said was...
Just a minute.
Okay.
So your question to Mr. Paulides is who is going to be the managing
Yes.
agent? And that's the
Who's
question.
going to be responsible for managing the units?
The Wareham Housing Authority, as has been indicated in all the documentation we provided, will manage, operate, and control the additional 4 units. They're not state units, though. They're separate units funded by the Wareham Community Preservation Fund. They will be separate and distinct, operated independently by the Wareham Housing Authority, just like we operate other units and vouchers for the state for 705, 667, 200. There are numerous programs we can operate. This is just one of many. In the other cities and towns and housing authorities operate community preservation housing when it's funded totally.
Thank you, Mr. Paulides. I believe you answered the question.
Thank you for that response. I was the one vote on the Board of Selectmen to recommend not to approve this article. Again, as you might have heard earlier, I certainly support senior housing. I just think for $650,000 of your money, you can probably do a lot better if you combine this kind of money with, for example, the land out at Littleton Drive, or perhaps another project where you can use that to leverage getting a developer in here, have them apply for CPC funding. In other words, control our own affordable housing destiny, create units that are senior affordable, and get more than 4. At Littleton Drive, when we get to that, we're actually looking to do about 40. And I would suggest
seconds.
that the body turn this down. Let's see if we can come up with a better use for the $650,000 and follow the Finance Committee recommendation. Thank you.
Time.
Madam Moderator?
You have about 30 seconds left.
Okay.
Mr. Powell-Latis.
In terms of affordability, there is nothing more affordable than public housing property owned and operated by a local public housing authority. Our operating cost for fiscal 18 per unit was less than $400 a unit. The rent for these units, total, unsubsidized, will be between $400 and $500. That's not with all these developers that are going to come in and get $400 or $500 from the tenant and another $1,000 from some federal or state subsidy. This is truly
Time.
affordable housing.
Time. Mrs. Slavin, you've been up, so I'm going to go to those who haven't spoken, and then we can come back to you if you have time left. On my left?
I guess Jean Connaughton, Precinct 3. I'd just like to make a couple of comments. Looking back at the Finance Committee's comments, I just want to reiterate that DHCD no longer builds new units. They will do renovations, and they have renovated Agawam Village to the tune of $2.1 million. So we do need to seek other funds if we want to add any housing. If you have read some of the material, you'll find that we have almost 200 people in Wareham seeking housing, and they're on a waiting list. Another 500 are throughout the state and have the opportunity to come here as well. We need senior housing. This is our only opportunity. I just want to address Peter's, I was looking back, we were into the selectmen several weeks ago when 4 selectmen voted in favor of this project. And just to give some thoughts, and perhaps Selectman Slavin would correct me, but what he was indicating is we could use this $650,000 now. However, what they're going to do over at Littleton is great, and we need both. And that will keep us at our 10%. And when Alan looked at it, we have CPC funds are going to increase over the next 3 years. So there should be more money in the kitty for the Littleton project. Thank you.
On my left?
Oh, sorry. Angela Dunham, Precinct 3. I don't think I could add any more to what Jean Connaughton just said, but I would like to urge this body to please vote in favor of this article for the same reasons. Future projects are certainly welcome, and we look forward to them, but we have a long list of people waiting, and we need to act on this. Thank you.
We have a gentleman on my right, Mr. Russell, I believe.
Irvin Russell, Precinct 6, and I'm standing in favor of this article. That I'm a former Housing Authority member, and I think that this is a pretty innovative idea. You know, with the exception of the classification of this being Agawam development, you know, that seems to be a little confusing, but the Housing Authority being in charge of affordable housing within this community is a long overdue event. And had the public housing, had our local housing authority been designated a public housing authority, we could have had huge numbers of affordable housing developments throughout this community. And I think any delay at this point in time, you know, delaying these 4 units or whatever that's going to cost, I think it needs to be done now, not next year or with this future little project or anything else. I think we need to move on it now. I want to commend the people for being innovative enough to come up with this plan. And I ask everybody to vote in favor of this. Thank you.
Selectman Slavin? No, I hear you.
Try this one.
This is good.
Your green light isn't on.
How about this one? There we go. My comment's probably going to be fairly humorous to everybody. I wanted to thank Jean for allowing me to sleep over the garage tonight.
Okay. On my right?
Sandy Slavin, we have a separate garage. The point I want to make, it was several years ago, we put out an RFP for senior affordable housing at Westfield. In the RFP, we said that $200,000 to $500,000 would be available for CPC if someone wanted the project. The project never happened. I am concerned that we really need to put these housing units in there now. Littleton is years away. We're putting $100,000 each year into the housing reserve. So when Littleton comes around, there will be some money, probably not the amount of money they're looking for, but give us our units now.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Mr. Muniz? Mr. Pigeon, excuse me. I recognize Mr. Muniz.
I don't, so you weren't speaking into the microphone, so I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry.
I just rise to ask you to support this article. It's been a number of years since we've added any new housing. I think Littleton Drive's a great idea. That's why I just wanted to kind of focus it a little more, so would be a little more knowledgeable what was going to happen. So I think we should move this forward, and then when Littleton comes around and all the plans are in place, move that forward too, if we think it's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pigeon, it's hard for me to see when you sit, so if you wish to speak, if you could stand, it makes it easier for me to look around and see that you're standing.
You want me to stand, Madam Moderator?
Yes, please.
Oh. Can you hear me now? I want to defend the Finance Committee. The petitioner was CPC. It's our responsibility to review CPC's request for money to find out if it's a check and balance, if it's an appropriate expenditure of their funds. Unfortunately, they were before us and weren't able to answer a number of questions that have been addressed here this evening. Now, had we done so, we of course in the past have supported these ventures. We do need housing, and we would have, I would say, approved it, not speaking for my fellow members, but I think we would have approved it had we had all the information. But we have to interview the petitioner. We don't go into the other projects that don't come before us. So based on that is how we voted, and we didn't feel the information we were getting from CPC was sufficient for us to make a complete decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman on my right.
Mike Flaherty, Precinct 1. I move the question.
I only see one other person standing. Would you hold that till he's finished?
Okay.
I don't see anybody else at the microphone.
Okay.
On my left?
Bill Lockwood, Precinct 3. Just like to point out, CPC, in addition to funding the affordable housing to the tune of $100,000, has a non-discretionary $700,000 contribution, which would cover the cost of this project in 1 year alone, and has not been applied to affordable housing with any magnitude over the course of the 10 or 12 years that this has been a program in the town. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no one else standing, so Mr. Flaherty, your motion to call the question is moved. No one else is standing. So I will now call for the vote on Article 10. And this is for new housing units at Agawam Village. And the motion before us is to transfer from the Community Preservation Affordable Housing Reserve Fund the sum of $650,000 for 4 new units of affordable senior housing at Agawam Village. It requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No. No.
It passes by a majority. Yeah. 9. Article 9. May I have a motion on Article 9?
Article 9, Madam Transfer of tax title property, I move to approve as printed in the warrant.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to speak to the article, please.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Let's see if this. Thank you, Madam Moderator. In reviewing this, through the Wareham Redevelopment Authority, it's our understanding that the 290-acre parcel, better known as the Graziano property, is up for sale. When looking at this property and frankly thinking about the future for the town and talking about one of those things, which is success is when preparation meets opportunity, we're looking to prepare for the opportunity coming forward. These are tax title properties, some from the 50s and 60s. They were bifurcated by Route 25, so now they're separate parcels on the sort of northern side. Matt, I don't know if do you have the copy of? Just to go over them. The map plot, lot 131, 1001, the assessed value is $40,600. That is a roughly 5-acre property. The next one is a 19.91 acre bacon strip, if you will, valued at $79,600. And the third is a 5.73 acre parcel assessed at $45,800. One of the things we're looking at is, frankly, we could sell these through the tax title auction tomorrow. That's what the rules are. You can go out and sell them, but instead of doing that, we'd like to look forward and see if we can present an opportunity with potentially, if that Graziano property we have any interest, and move forward and do something better for the community and try to bring an opportunity into the community. So I thank you for your time and consideration on this article.
Thank you. May I have the vote and recommendation of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen, recommends approval of this Article 500.
Have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee recommends approval of this Article 700.
To any voter wish to speak to the article? I believe we had someone standing on my left.
I don't think so.
Lisa Morales, Precinct 2. I'd like to move this for further study, please.
I'm sorry.
My motion would be to move this for further study.
Okay, do you have that motion in writing?
I could,
okay,
if you get a second.
If you would,
then.
please. Do we have a second? I have heard a second. We now have a motion on the floor for further study. To speak to your reason for further study.
As a ratepayer in the Onset Water District, my understanding is that at least one of these parcels abuts the aquifer, and I would like to have this for further study for Onset Water District to have the opportunity to possibly purchase one of these properties. Once it goes to the Redevelopment Authority, this body has no say in what happens to that property, and I'd like to see the opportunity to protect the Onset aquifer.
Okay, may I have that in writing if you have a chance to speak to the amendment, please?
Yes, I'd urge the body to vote down the amendment. I had a conversation with Ben Hughes, who is the chairman of the Onset Water Commission, about this. All 3 parcels actually are located in the Zone 2 wellhead protection area. This means that any development out there has to take place in accordance with DEP regulations. Some of the things you can't do out there, you can't have a landfill or a dump, you can't have a car graveyard or a junkyard, you can't stockpile snow that's got salt or other chemicals in it. no oil tank farms, no industrial contamination treatment and disposal works. You can't generate hazardous waste or treat or store it there. You can't store sludge or septage. You can't have uncontained storage of salt, commercial fertilizers, animal manure, hazardous materials including oil, unless the oil or gasoline is in above-ground storage tanks on an impervious surface. You can't excavate soils within 4 feet of the historically high groundwater elevation. And the final one, which is kind of a big one, you can't embark upon any land use that renders more than 15% of the parcels impervious. And once again, I did reach out to the chairman of the Onset Water Commission about this, and his response was, and I quote directly, "As long as all rules and regs are followed and nothing endangers our water supply, I have no particular issue with it." Again, if they're not transferred to the redevelopment authority, then they're going to go up for auction, and there's zero control there over
30
who
seconds.
wins the bid process and the price they would fetch. So I would urge the body to vote down the amendment.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on the amendment on my left?
With all due respect for Mr. Hughes, this has never come before the Onset Water District. It's not been on any single agenda. It is not referred in any minutes. They have not discussed this, and they have not given the Onset ratepayers an opportunity. Anybody who purchased this would have to abide by all of the rules as said, but we will lose complete control, and if they put in the other piece of property, now we have an enormous piece of property that's going to go to who knows what. I simply ask that this go to further study.
Thank you, Ms. Morales. To the woman standing behind you on my left, please.
Nancy McHale, Precinct 5. I believe that not only do those properties, at least the larger one, abut or overlay the aquifer, they also abut conservation land. So I would also request further study on this, because those properties are very valuable as conservation lands. And as I see it, it looks like there's even been some encroachment onto those from uses that are nearby. So I would recommend for further study on this. The other thing I would ask the redevelopment authority is for future articles going forward, perhaps specify specifically what's going on or what your desire to do with these properties, or to at least post your, the agenda so that there's more of a public input onto them. But please further study these. As I said, the large parcel on the right-hand side is all conservation land. It's very valuable. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Slavin, are you standing to speak to the amendment or the original? Original, okay. Seeing no one else standing, Mr. Muniz, do you wish to speak to?
I'd like to speak to the amendment, and I'm in favor of it. I think 6 months is not a big time period to take a look at this, as it does abut the Red Brook Wildlife Management Area and also the Lyman Reserve. That's a 19-acre parcel. There'd be a possibility that they could come up with some funds to purchase it. And I'm not totally against the idea of turning it over. But at this point in time, I think further study would be the wiser way to go. Again, in 6 months, we can bring it back and vote up or down how we want to do. Maybe we can split it up, move 19-acre parcel one way and move the other 10 acres another way. Let's have some conversation. You have an open space committee here. I don't know if they were informed about it or if they've spoken to it at all. And you got a land trust in town who may have interest. The wildlife management area, which abuts it, may be very interested in that 19-acre parcel. I'd just like to see them given an opportunity to address this and possibly purchase it from the town. And we don't have to send it right out to tax title. That's just kind of a threat. Thank you.
Selectman Tropiano?
I just want to make sure everybody realizes that the redevelopment authority meetings are posted, not only online, but also in the proper posting places, So I just wanted to clarify that. I think somebody said that their meetings haven't been posted, but they always are. And what's on the agenda, of course, is posted just like all of our agendas.
Thank you. Gentlemen, am I right to speak to the amendment?
Hello? Mike Flaherty, Precinct 1. Can you? Okay, good. I actually didn't come here today to discuss this, but in listening to the motion to go to further study, I'm kind of persuaded here, and I'm kind of curious, what's the harm in waiting another 6 months, as Mr. Muniz said, and having the other correct bodies that involved, bring it up on their formal agenda? I guess I'd ask that of Mr. Teitelbaum, just because.
Could you just repeat that?
Just what's the harm in waiting another 6 months?
Well, I mean, we've waited 50 years, but I will say this. If every time the Redevelopment Authority comes forward with an article and you're telling us to wait 6 months or a year, this is one of the reasons nothing gets done in this town, frankly, is because everybody wants to wait 6 months. Everybody wants to push things off. And things get pushed off, they get forgotten about, and good ideas die in the tank. You people created a redevelopment authority 2 years ago
Mr.
to
Teitelbaum,
push for these sorts of
to
things.
answer the question, what's the harm?
I'm trying to explain the harm, which is that letting opportunities go or delaying opportunities. We just heard from the Community Preservation Committee that delaying the housing costs money. Delaying this might have a cost too that we don't know about yet.
Thank you. Gentlemen on my left? Are you through, Mr. Flaherty?
No, I'm not done. So I would just say that, usually when people vote for a further study, it's, to kill it, informally. I sincerely would like to see this come back in 6 months, but done right. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen on my left?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Bill Heaney, Precinct 1. The problem that I have with further study is who's going to study it? And as the previous speaker said, usually when things are referred to further study, it's a way to just get it off the table and not have to deal with it. So I'd like to know who's going to study it and what they're going to study, and to make sure that it comes back in 6 months.
To answer the question,
The only one who can answer who's going to study it is if this meeting basically says someone's going to further study it, which is not in place. I also have a comment when you're done.
does that answer your question, Mr. Haney? Unless this body, in the motion for further study, identifies who's going to study it and what's going to be studied, there is nothing before us.
So if I understand it correctly, the way the motion reads right now, it's just going to languish. There's nobody there to study it, and nobody responsible to bring it back for the next meeting. So it's just an opportunity to bury it.
Correct.
It doesn't mean that somebody can't. If redevelopment chooses to put this on their agenda, then they absolutely could do that. They have business that they can do, and it could be them, it could be the Board of Selectmen, it could be anybody that could do it. But
Right,
we
but
have nothing in the motion, in the amendment, for further study that identifies who, what, where, or how.
So then you can just think of it as an opportunity to bury it if nobody's going to take responsibility for it. Right?
I
Yes.
can't answer that.
I can answer yes.
Okay.
I think Selectman Slavin was up next.
Thank you. As everybody knows, I'm a member of a lot of different organizations in town. One, of course, is the Land Trust, Buzzards Bay Coalition. We've put a lot of land into conservation use, et cetera, which limits our tax levy, which limits our ability to continue to provide services to the town. I know this is going to seem like a stretch, but we get to a certain point where you go past what's reasonable for conservation. If this town wants to continue to have basically services, et cetera, that continue and not keep being short dollar-wise, we need, when we have an opportunity to develop a piece of property which goes onto the tax levy, which basically reduces everybody else's responsibilities, we have to think about this seriously. We just can't keep saying we're going to put this off or we're going to hold this back or whatever. there are extremely strict rules when it comes to aquifers of what you can do and you can't do. It's extremely strict. It's getting worse all the time. So to say that this particular
30
piece
seconds.
of, thank you, this particular piece of property is going to cause problems with the aquifer is really not accurate at all. So I'd ask you to go ahead and allow this to happen. We have to start to develop properties that we have before we have no income available. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Muniz, you've already stood, but you do have some time, so I'm going to go to the gentleman on my left who has not had the opportunity to speak. On my left?
Yeah, Ed Ransom here, Precinct 2. I was down in the Onset Water Department today, and I asked them if they knew about it. Nobody down there had any inclination of what was going on. So that's why I'd like to see it tabled for, you know, whatever period of time, 6 months, 3 months. So, I mean, they couldn't give me any information,
If I can answer that.
just like I can't get any information here.
We have a motion before us for further study. So, Mrs. Morales, your time is up. You've used all your time.
There was a request.
No, Mrs. Morales, you have used all. I'm sorry, you have 12 seconds.
I can't stop laughing. Mr. Slavin didn't even speak to the amendment. The amendment is for further study. If you need someone, that's a term of art for parliamentarian purposes. I will be happy to take responsibility for having this studied by the Onset Water District and the ratepayers, if that's what's required. But to say that this is what's wrong with having discussion is wrong.
Ms. Morales,
That's not
time.
okay.
Hang on, let me see. You've got some time left. Jim has some time left, but let me go to someone who hasn't used any time.
Hi, Linda Scharf, Precinct 3.
I'm sorry, what was the name again?
Linda Scharf.
Thank you.
The only question that I had was, there was the, can we just get an idea of when you say what it might be used for, what those opportunities, a few examples of what those opportunities might be?
To answer the question, if anybody so chooses, what other uses that land might have?
Just briefly, the Director of Planning has been approached by the property owner and has been told that they are putting the property up for sale. There are actually several properties that Graziano sort of mines out there. They're under different ownership, but they're all within the same family. And apparently the gravel business is winding down, so they're looking to sell. And they approached the town and said, you've got surrounding properties, perhaps you'd like to do something with them, make them available so that when we sell the land, which they're hopeful to do, these properties could also be considered within that. Understand that within the...
Mr. Titlebaum, I believe the question was what other uses
yeah.
would be applicable?
To be determined.
Anything
yeah, at this
legally
point, anything,
zoned?
yeah, anything legally zoned, and to the extent that some subsequent purchaser would have to seek a variance, they would have to go through that process, just like any of us landowners do when we want to do something that's outside of the zoning bylaws.
Okay. On my left?
Judy Capriccio, Precinct 1. I've been listening to all the selectmen, and I think they've answered all the questions. And what I think is very important is, I heard from Selectman Titlebaum and Selectman Slavin that all laws are going to be followed. There are regulations governing what can be developed and what can't be developed, so it is protected. And then Selectman Tropiano has also stated, and what we know is, these meetings have been posted. People could have come to meetings and they didn't choose to. Tonight's not the place to say, I didn't have a chance because you did. And then the last thing I'd like to say is that the Housing Authority, it's their job, the Redevelopment Authority, I mean, it's their job to figure out how to put these lands to the best use to make money from our town. And of course, again, there are legal statutes that protect the parts that need to be protected.
Thank you. Selectman Muniz?
Again, this is working. I'm not looking for all the parcels in particular. I'd like a further study, not to postpone it indefinitely like some people like to say, to way to bury it. There's a 19-acre parcel which abuts already protected
have about 10
conservation land.
seconds.
I'd urge you to support a motion as presented and have further study. The town owns it. They can appoint the groups to study it. It could be open space, it could be the redevelopment authority, it could be the land trust, in order to see what to do with it. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no one else standing. We have an amendment on Article 9 for further study for the transfer of the tax title property on Littleton Drive. This requires majority vote. All these...
Not Littleton Drive.
I'm sorry.
Lots east of Route 25.
Lots east of 25. I've got papers covering. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. We have an amendment on the floor for further study. It requires a majority vote. All those in favor of further study, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
The motion, I'm going to take a count. It was pretty close, but I would ask the tellers to come forward. All those in favor of further study, please raise your cards. On my right?
9.
9. Mr. Gomes?
12.
12. On my left? 26, 26. And in the center?
36, 36.
36, 36. All those opposed to further study, please raise your cards. On my right?
35.
6.
6.
29. 29.
29. 6. There are 83 in the affirmative and 76 in the negative. The motion for further study passes. 83 to 76. So now it becomes the main motion. So that because that was an amendment, it now becomes the main motion, and it requires a majority vote. So all those in favor of further study, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. It passes by a majority for further study. Madam Clerk? Seven. Article 7.
Article 7, I move to approve as printed in warrant.
Do I have a second? To speak to the article?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Moderator. The only item that you're allowed to set aside marijuana revenues for without a special act is for a stabilization fund. So in reviewing it and some of the concerns we've heard from the community and the thoughts of how to set forth and use these funds, we're seeking to create a stabilization fund for municipal facilities, and more specifically, a new police station. As 25% of all marijuana revenue or cannabis revenue coming into the town would go into the stabilization fund. Now, to access the stabilization fund, it requires a town meeting vote. So they are, until town meeting acts on any of the funds in there, they're in a secure location, if you will. So that's what we're looking to do with this article. Thank you.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen recommends approval of this Article 500.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee recommends approval of this Article 700.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 7? Seeing no one standing, I will call for a vote. This requires a majority vote. You're voting to see if the town will establish a municipal facility stabilization fund as authorized by Mass General laws, into which 25% of all marijuana revenues will go into the stabilization fund. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Article 4. May I have a motion on Article 4, please?
Yes, Madam Moderator, I move that the town transfer $370,060 from certified free cash to fund, number 1, the snow and ice. We do not have a deficit, fortunately. Number 2, matching grant funds of $35,060. Number 3, collective bargaining reserve of $150,000. Number 4, beach nourishment, planning and management, $100,000. 5, demolition and safety funds, $50,000. 6, brush and leaf disposal, $35,000, with a total of $370,060.
Thank you. Do I have a second? I have a second. To speak to the article?
Thank you. The matching funds are for these following items: Littleton Drive. This grant would fund a survey and analysis of the town property with the goal of determining whether...
We're on Article 4.
Article 4 for the, yeah, the matching grant.
Yeah.
Yeah, matching grants.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. With the goal of determining the reuse of the property, looking for seeing if senior age cottage-style housing is feasible. The Municipal Vulnerability Action Grant. This grant funds assessment of municipal assets to determine the risk from coastal flooding and the town's potential responses to protect those assets. And then the Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan. This is connected to the federal flood insurance program and could lead to mitigation construction grants and reduced insurance premiums for property owners. The next item you have is collective bargaining reserve for $150,000. That, although we've set aside funds within the FY20 operating budget, we are currently engaged with 10 out of 11 union contracts. I think it's prudent at this time to set funds aside, as we don't know how they will be settled at this time. Some could go to arbitration. The next one is the Beach Nourishment Program. And right now we're looking specifically at two major items. One is Swift's Beach, and it would be to develop a GIS aerial imagery, the concepts for a pedestrian bridge, potentially the parking lot relocation. If you haven't noticed, the sands are disappearing on Swift's Beach, and one of the items to look at is whether you would move the parking lot further back in order to regenerate beach sand. Stormwater improvements, concepts for the site improvements, beach nourishment and dune placement, and conceptual beach improvement plan. One of the other items we're looking at is Shell Point. If you notice the parking lot, and if you're facing out towards the water when you go down the parking lot, the right-hand side, we've been losing a lot of sand from that area, and the parking lot's being undermined. In order to do anything, we need to take a look at some studies. Also, going back to Swiss Beach and also Shell Point, one of the things we're seeing that's harmful to the beach is some of the folks are deciding to drive back and forth from this area, and we'd look at setting up some barriers for that as well. You have the demolition safety funds. We're often asked to make private property safe, if you will. There's some abandoned houses. There's some houses that are so deep in family, if you will, fights that nobody's willing to fix those. The neighbors are the ones that have to suffer with that. So one of the things is setting aside some funds to first make those safe, and second, if needed, to demolish those. We lien the properties and we eventually get our funds back, or we get the property. One of them is that you can take a look at is the Sandwich Road property that had a fire years back. We ended up having to clean that up because nobody else would, and there was asbestos material, so it cost us a lot to clean it up. However, we now own that waterfront parcel and are looking forward to potentially make that a water access location, including kayak launch. So these funds will benefit the community. Brush and leaf disposal. Unfortunately, and this includes stumps, we used to be able to burn a lot of the brush and the stumps. However, somebody called the EPA and we got a nastygram saying we can't do that anymore. So now we need some funds to get rid of that pile. And I know you're saying we only are able to go there every bi-weekly. Well, it still adds up. We need to be able to grind these, and some of those materials we still can't use, so we're seeking funds set aside for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. I apologize. I was looking at the wrong page up here. May I have the vote and recommendation of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen recommends approval 500.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee recommends approval of this Article 800.
Thank you. Anything further to be said on my right?
Sandy Slavin, Precinct 3, co-chair of CPC. Just to confirm that the beach work for Swiss Beach, you will be looking to spend the $11,000 that had been previously approved for a engineering plan for Swiss Beach to include the bridge and the no drive-through. Just to confirm that you will be looking to use that funds for adding to that 100,000.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 4? Seeing no one standing, I'll call for the vote. The vote is a majority vote, and the motion before you is to transfer $370,060 from certified free cash for the accounts that appear before you on the screen. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Article 11. May I have a motion, please?
Yes, Madam Moderator. Article 11, I move to approve as printed in the warrant.
I have a second. Anything to be said on Article 11?
If I may, Madam Moderator, this isn't just to extend our terms for 3 years. We all have a choice of serving 3 years each cycle. However, we find at the end of 6 years of continuous service, we have a certain amount of value in terms of our knowledge. There's projects that are ongoing, and losing that individual for a year and then perhaps coming back if he's able to, or he or she, that it's a gap that can't be filled anymore and they have to play catch up. We think some of the knowledge that we gain, because we address some of these articles or issues once a year, and it's difficult to make an accumulation of knowledge, background, and understanding. So we're asking just an opportunity to serve an extra, and not losing a year if we so choose as individuals. We have a good example, our friend at the end of the table, Tom, he's come back to us fortunately. He's brought 6 years of knowledge that he had previously, but he has a gap, so he has a catching up. We just like the opportunity as individuals to make that choice of being 3 more years of continuous service if we choose. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have the vote recommendation of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen recommends approval of this Article 500.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee recommends approval of this article, 700.
Anything further to be said? Selectman Slavin?
The Finance Committee is probably the most difficult committee in the town of Wareham. The technical expertise required and the educational background, because of all the different things they're involved with, is really critical. The first 3 years, you're usually punting in the wind trying to figure it out. The next 3 years, you start to become effective, and in the third 3 years, if you let this happen, they do their best job possible. I highly recommend this change.
Is there anything further to be said on Article 11? Seeing no one standing, I will call for a vote. And this is to extend the term limits of the Finance Committee. Requires majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous. Who did I hear? I did. I guess it passes by majority. Article 3. May I have a motion on Article 3?
Article 3, Spring 2019 Capital. I move that the town approve the list of capital items and transfer $540,000 from certified free cash and $215,000 from certified retained earnings to fund the items as listed. I can read them, or if Derek will define them, I'd prefer he do that.
Do I have a second? I have a second. To speak to the article, Article 3?
Thank you. If you have the handout, the administration handout, that's where the further information is for these items. The first item actually came to our attention April 16th. So we're lucky to have town meeting and right around the corner for this. And during a routine inspection on April 16th, to support the construction of a resident seawall near C Street, a manhole supporting 3 gravity mains was found to have sunk 18 inches into the sand and biomass of the Wareham River. That's, I guess that's fancy for muck. The gravity mains were constructed from ductile iron and have been submerged in brackish water since the 1970s. Although a full plan of reconstruction has not been created, engineers believe that water pollution control will need to replace the pipes surrounding the sunken manhole, stabilize or replace the sunken manhole, and line the ductile iron pipe from the entire system. Initial cost estimates are in the $600,000 range. Water Pollution Control hopes to lower costs by combining this project with lining pipes, leading to Smith's Pump to avoid 2 mobilization costs. To accomplish this, we're requesting $600,000 from the fiscal 2019 budget.
Thank you. May I have the vote recommendation of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen recommend this 500.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
Yes. The Finance Committee voted on this evening after hearing the increased cost for water pollution control facility, and we voted 800. We urge that you approve this.
Thank you.
Madam Moderator, I took too long of a pregnant pause. I was going to go through the
Oh,
whole
I'm
list.
sorry. I apologize.
I apologize.
That's true for you and I tonight. I apologize. Go ahead.
So I'll move fast, I promise. The next one is a 25% match for the engineering study, which would be $82,000. That's within the water pollution control budget. Then we have to remove, mitigate, and install roofs at the water pollution control facility, and that's a listing of the buildings that'd be impacted of $215,000. Then we have the high school and middle school security, safety upgrades, including door handles, the wiring, cameras, and servers. Safety in today's environment is paramount. That's $235,000. That's using free cash. Command SUV for the Wareham Police Department. Now, the cost of that vehicle, fully equipped, is $50,000. We're seeking a 3-year capital lease, so it'd be about $18,000 a year. The first payment would be in this year's capital line budget that we have for Wareham PD. The next item are would be 4 SUVs, 3 for the Wareham Police Department, 1 for municipal maintenance, and 1 pickup with plow package for municipal maintenance. That's paid from free cash. Upgrade and repair of street lights for $50,000. Previously, we've just been doing the LED upgrade. We have, with some of the concerns from folks, we have added repair to that as well. And for the EMS department, ballistic helmets and vests for the staff, $30,000. Obviously, their safety and some of the issues they face daily warrants this, and that's from free cash. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything further to be said on Article 3 on my right?
Thank you, Sandy Slavin, Precinct 3. If we have 2 dollar amounts under I move to approve and the dollar amounts don't match what's in the spreadsheet, what becomes the rule? What are we voting on? The items in the spreadsheet or the amount of money for the transfer and the certified earnings? 'Cause
Sandy,
I
the
think
$540,000 is from the free cash, $215,000 from retained earnings, and the other are already in the budgets and are only approvals.
the 600,000 is in a budget
The $600,000 is in the budget.
for
For water pollution control, you have it in there because you did not do that
Okay,
project in the fall.
Okay, so it's what's in the spreadsheet, not what the rude words are.
No, the words are correct. We're
Okay.
transferring from free cash and we're transferring from retained earnings. That's why it specifically says the town to approve the list of capital items and transfer funds for the items that require the funds. That's as listed.
So the police capital budget is taking care of the vehicles, the SUVs?
The police capital budget would be
Yep. Okay, so we have free cash, police capital budget, retained earnings, and the water pollution control budget, all funding those spreadsheets.
Right, all showing what they align with.
Thank you.
Is there anything further on Article 3? Seeing no one standing, I will call for the vote. You're voting on approving the list of capital items as is before you. Requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous. And I think we have just one more, Article 2. May I have a motion on Article 2? Oh, we can't hear you. Tom, you need to speak right into the microphone.
Excuse me. Fund parking program. I move that the town transfer $154,000.
We can't hear you. We need you to speak into a microphone.
That's it. That's all the reach you got. I'm here, guys. I move that the town transfer $144,000 from the receipts reserved for appropriation onset pier
Hold on,
account.
Mr. Worthen. I believe it's 164,000.
I'm on the wrong deal here.
No, you're on the right page. Different on this slide.
That's correct, Mr. Sullivan.
I
right.
apologize. It's 164,000 on the, as shown on the screen, from the receipts reserved for appropriation onset pier account to fund the onset parking program and onset community projects.
Do I have a second? To speak to the article?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The breakdown of these funds would be $50,000 for Hammond School, the tennis and basketball courts. It would be to rehab both the tennis and basketball courts, including relining the tennis courts with pickleball courts lines, which has become quite popular. Met with group CORE, Wareham Boys and Girls Club, and some members from Onset who had proposed this, and we think it's an excellent plan. $28,000 for the parking officers. They also clean the bathrooms and empty the solar trash cans. $38,000 to update the kiosk machines, including the future moving forward to the pay-by-plate and being able to use an app on your phone. $15,000 for onset signage, $11,000 for extra seasonal police patrols in onset, $10,000 for the repair of period lights, and $2,000 for the fuel and vehicle costs, and a $10,000 contingency.
May I have the, may I have the vote recommendation of the Board of Selectmen, please?
Board of Selectmen recommends approval of this Article 500.
May I have the vote recommendation of the Finance Committee, please?
The Finance Committee voted approval 7-0-0.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 2? Seeing no one standing, I'll call for the vote. This requires majority vote, and this is to transfer $164,000 from the receipts reserved for appropriation onset pier account to fund the onset parking program and onset community projects. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous. I believe that concludes our special town meeting. I will accept a motion to dissolve the special. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And we will go back to the annual. I'm sorry? Just assume.
Drive.
I don't think anybody wants to. And I believe we were on Article 17. And I believe Mrs. Slavin was standing to speak to Article 17, the so we're back to the original Article 17. Mrs. Slavin?
Thank you, Sandy Slavin, Precinct 3. My question is, why does real estate title have to be passed over to the redevelopment authority? The property is owned by the town. Why does it have to be given to the redevelopment authority, who will have absolutely no, I'm trying to think how the state put it. They don't have to answer to anybody. If I read that correctly, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but why do they have to own it? And then I have a second question.
To answer the question?
It's been sitting there since the 1990s. If you want something done, the redevelopment authority is the body to get that done.
But the question is, why
Yeah.
must,
I think the question, I think I understand Sandy's question, and I think maybe, and town council could probably correct me, is because a redevelopment authority is a separate authority outside of the town. It's not part of the town, so you're transferring it to another entity.
and they can't redevelop it with it still being owned by the town? They can't work with a developer unless they own the property? I'm just trying to understand why ownership must be transferred.
That's a policy question. To answer the question, should anybody care to?
Yeah, and looking at this, Sandy, I'm going to be blunt. This is, it's a little bit more nimble than the normal process. We're looking to put together ideas, looking to try and make this happen. I think it was less than a year ago or so, or maybe a little bit over, they started the redevelopment authority, and it would be nice to see what can happen with it. I was here when we first did the Westfield, and we studied that to death. And
Yep.
people put conditions on it that killed it. And I was the one that had to put a 50-page RFP out for what turned out to be no reason. It does get a little frustrating, and I understand. It's absolutely your property, it's your ideas, it's whatever can happen, but we think that the policy decision would be to allow this to go to the redevelopment authority that's specifically created to help develop properties and do this. So I start thinking about, why did we create it if we're not going to let it do its job?
And just
There's
one more.
one other point I'd like to make.
Just a minute.
Excuse me,
Mr.
answering
Hurd,
your question?
Mr. Hurd,
Yes.
is it, if you could stand, because I don't see you when you're sitting, so I can recognize you. It's hard for me to look down. To answer Sandy's question,
Yes, to answer Sandy's question, were it not to be transferred at this point, any transfer, I believe, would have to come back to town meeting. And then any proposal would be not only second-guessed, but perhaps even postponed for further study, which would not go through.
I have no problem with the article. I support it. I just I'm trying to understand why ownership must be changed. I want that piece of land developed. It's critical. Yes, they're talking about senior housing, but unfortunately, we're still in the Boston housing grid, so really
30
being
seconds.
affordable will be questionable, but that's another topic for discussion. But Tremont Nail is not owned by the Redevelopment Authority, and they're working on bringing up that property. So I just don't understand why it has to be owned, that's all.
gentleman on my left.
Madam Moderator, it's still very difficult to hear and understand speakers, especially from these mics. So if there's anything that could be done to rectify that, it'd be appreciated.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 17? Seeing no one standing, I will call for a vote. Because this is a conveyance of real estate, it does require a 2/3 vote. I'm going to try for unanimous. All those in favor of Article 17 to convey the real estate title on Littleton Drive to the Redevelopment Authority, please say aye. All those opposed? It passes by a 2/3 uncounted vote. Article 21.
Article 21. I move that the town vote to grant an easement over town-owned property identified on Assessor's Map 132 as Lot A-1. The easement dimensions being more particularly described on a plan entitled Easement Plan Proposed Sewer Connection 2571 Cranberry Highway, Wareham, Mass. Prepared for Sea Lavender LLC, care of Joseph Zedi, P.O. Box 91, Wareham, Mass.
Okay. Mr. Camerano, actually, this is a petition article, so the motion should come from the petitioner. I'm going to give courtesy of the floor to the engineer from GAF Engineering, who is representing the petitioner this evening. So if you would please give us the motion, and then you'll have time to 5 minutes to speak to it. Mr. Brian Grady.
Yes, thank you. Brian Grady, GAF Engineering. I move that the town vote to grant an easement over town-owned property identified on Assessor's Map 132 as Lot A1, the easement dimensions being more particularly described on a plan entitled Easement Plan Proposed Sewer Connection 2571 Cranberry Highway, Wareham, Mass. Prepared for Sea Lavender LLC, care of Joseph Zedi, P.O. Box 91, Wareham, Mass.
Thank you. Do I have a second? I have a second. You have 5 minutes to explain your article, Mr. Grady.
Yeah, this article is to provide an easement for what is Mill Pond Diner. I think everyone knows that. Mill Pond Diner has enjoyed a municipal sewer connection for nearly 20 years now, I understand, but that connection goes through an adjacent property. So it was a shared connection, which then went under Elm Street and connected to the sewer force main on the Tremont Nail property. The connection to Mill Pond Diner was severed unilaterally through no action of Mr. Zedi. So what this proposal is the first step in a process to allow the easement for Mr. Zedi connect to the sewer main on the Tremont Nail property. And if this is approved, then it would go into the next step, which would be preparing plans and having discussions with the town to allow the physical connection.
Thank you. May I have the vote and recommendation of the Board of Selectmen?
The Board of Selectmen recommended no action, 5-0-0.
May I have vote and recommendation in the Finance Committee?
What was the vote? We voted 7-0-0.
It would be
Approval.
favorable, approval.
I'm in favor.
Is there anything further to be said on Article 21? I see no one standing. I will call for the vote. You have before you that the, Mr. Camerano?
Yes, Madam Moderator, thank you. The only question I have is, there are other options on connection of this sewer, am I correct? This isn't the only option available to this?
To answer the question only?
For connection to the municipal sewer,
Yes,
this is the most feasible option, yes.
that wasn't my
You
question.
know, the
You said
question,
most
I believe,
feasible.
Mr. Grady, was there any other options available?
For connection to municipal sewer,
Yes,
this is the most feasible option. There's always other options available. This is the most cost-effective, most feasible.
that was my question. So basically then, this is the cheapest option, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now, the only thing I can see is, I mean, if, you know, we give an easement, you know, for the town, but there's always liability, so, I mean, the gentleman's asking for something that really has no benefit to the town, just liability. That's the only question that I have. I mean, we're giving up an easement that's gonna give liability to the town without any benefit to the town. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, that's just my opinion, I'd like to state that, thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman on my left, behind Mr. Grady.
Thank you, Moderator Bill Heaney, Precinct 1. I'd just like to ask the selectmen, why did they vote no action?
Does anyone care to answer the question?
I'm not a selectman, but I'll answer that for them. Part of this is that town meeting can authorize the easement, but it has to be consummated, basically, if you will, through an agreement with the town thereafter. We do not currently have an agreement. We would have to negotiate that, and only then would it actually be executed. So this would give the authorization for an easement, but does not mean that an easement will automatically happen without an agreement. And I believe the selectmen, without having a firm agreement negotiated, we're neutral on it, if you will.
That's correct.
So if there was an amendment to say something to the effect of subject to the successful negotiation of an agreement, would that change anything?
I believe that's a legal question, Mr. Haney. Would you like to pose that question to town council?
Sure.
If you would.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Rich Bowen, Town Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight, I think. Yeah, let's assume for the sake of discussion that the article passes. At that point, the passage of the article authorizes the Board of Selectmen to convey the easement. It doesn't require them to do so. That's the first part of the answer. The second part is that conveyance of interests in land are subject to Chapter 30B, Section 16, which is the Uniform Procurement Act, which requires some form of procurement process. So under no circumstances, even if the Board of Selectmen were so inclined, I don't know one way or the other, the board couldn't just hand it over. The Uniform Procurement Act would have to be satisfied.
Okay, so we could vote this article in, and there's still more work to be done. It doesn't mean that they get the easement. It just means that there's another step in the process.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Gentleman on my left.
George Barrett, Precinct 5. You stated that there was no benefit to the town. The reason sewerage was installed in the town in the first place was to clean up the coastal areas. The alternative at this site would be a Title V system within hundreds of feet from the river and very high water table area. Tell me what the benefit is. You know, that's the reason we put sewerage in the first place. And a restaurant provides, I don't know what the equation is, but multiple EDUs per seat or per seating. I don't know whether it's 1 per 16 seats or whatever, and I think the seating for the diner is around 85, 90. So it pays several homes worth of EDUs and provides us with cleaner water by allowing this connection.
Gentleman on my right?
Yes, the member on the Finance Committee mentioned about liability to the town. I don't see where there's going to be any liability to the town. The contractor has to provide a bond, so if there's any damage or anything goes afoul, they're covered with the bond. And Mr. Ziti has been, I don't know how he's in business. I mean, he has to pump that sewer, his septic system out, maybe once or twice a month, probably $400 and this is just unbelievable that he hasn't been allowed to tie into the town sewer. As Mr. Barrett said, that's what it's for. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman on my right?
Mike Flaherty, I move the question.
I only have one more speaker, Mike. Stay there.
All right.
Dominic, I think you have a few seconds left.
Thank you. No, I didn't mean it as far as, you know, a septic, but there is other routes that he can go out, you know, to run the pipeline. You know, he's just going the easiest way. I didn't say that title, you know, going into a septic system is what I meant. As far as cleaning the water, I agree with you. And as far as the other gentleman said, you know, as far as liability,
30 seconds.
I understand that during the project that there is a bond. I'm talking about, you know, in the future, ruptured pipes, things like that on town property. That's what I meant as far as liability. I have no objections to helping Mr. Ziti. I just said that there are other ways to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Slavin, Mr. Flaherty has made a motion for moving the question, and
I just have a comment with history very quickly.
no. We have a motion. We have a motion to move the question. Requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of moving the question, which means we'll have no more discussion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The question has been moved. We now will call for a vote. So we have Article 21, which has come before you to grant an easement over town-owned property, as is shown on the screen, and because this is a conveyance of an easement over town property, it does require a 2/3 vote. I will try for unanimous. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Article 10. May I have a motion on Article 10, please?
Article 10, Wareham Pollution Control Facility Enterprise Fund. I move that the town vote to appropriate $6,928,571 from the Water Pollution Control Facility enterprise revenues and $1,307,122 from WPCF Revenue Betterment Reserves to defray WPCF direct costs, and that $918,168 as appropriated under Article 7 of the Spring 2019 Annual Town Meeting be used for WPCF indirect cost to fund the total fiscal year 2020 operation cost of the Water Pollution Control Facility Enterprise Fund.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Just for clarification, the WPCF is Water Pollution Control Facility. I know sometimes we know what it means, but voters may not know. So the WPCF is Water Pollution Control Facility. To speak to the article, Article 10.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. This is the annual budget for the enterprise fund known as the Water Pollution Control Facility. That means it's actually a budget outside of our general fund budget. It is basically treated like its own business, and they expend the revenues that they generate through things such as EDUs, sludge, and the grease and other such items. Thank you.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen recommends approval of this Article 500.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee recommends approval of this Article 700.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 10, which is the budget for the Water Pollution Control Facility? You have before you a vote to appropriate the numbers before you on the screen. All those, it requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous. 11. Article 11.
Front yard storage, I move that the town vote to enact the amendments to Article 5 of the zoning bylaw as printed in the warrant.
Do I have a second? Okay, we need to have a report from the planning board because it is a zoning article, and notice that a hearing has been held and properly noticed. Mr. Barrett.
Yes, George Barrett, Chair of the Planning Board. Pursuant to Section 5 of the State Zoning Act, Chapter 40A, the Wareham Planning Board held a public hearing on March 11th on proposed amendments to the Wareham zoning bylaws in the annual spring meeting warrant Article 11. This may look familiar to you. You saw it, I believe, in the fall, where it was recommended to further study. We held a public hearing on it, where the Planning Board voted 4-0-0 to recommend favorable action. This was brought to us at the request of the building commissioner to help him to clean up some troublesome properties in town. By adding the existing the first paragraph is a addition to the existing bylaw, which is adding vessels to the list of vehicles stored unregistered on a property. Some of the points that came up was this is a waterfront community and it's not unusual to have multiple boats in a yard, especially during the wintertime. I think the key to that particular aspect is he's talking about unregistered vessels only. So if you store boats in your yard and they're duly registered, it's not an issue. One of the issues that came up last fall, and again at the public hearing, was boats that don't require a registration. And we talked about putting an exclusion in the bylaw, but after some discussion, and the building commissioner's explanation that he's only intends to enforce this on a complaint basis. But what was pointed out at this meeting last fall was even though you may not have a complaint, you might still be in violation and be open to such fines and determinations. At the end of it, the board voted to support the building commissioner in his efforts and give him the tools he needs to do his job, and that's what we recommend to the body. The second part of it is a new section, Section 535, to address outdoor storage. There was some discussion as to the role of a business certificate that was kind of outside of the bylaw. There was some worry last year that we changed some of the wording to eliminate the possibility of multiple extremely tall fences popping up all over town. So we also voted 4-0-0 to recommend that section of the bylaw.
Thank you. May I have the vote and recommendation of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen recommends approval of this Article 500.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee recommends approval of this Article 700.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 11? Gentlemen, on my right?
Mike Flaherty just had a question. I think I heard on boats that don't need to be registered could be in violation, so if I had a rowboat and a canoe in my yard, I'm in violation?
To answer the question only, Mr. Barrett?
The way it is currently written, yes, it would be a discretionary issue with the building commissioner.
No, I totally oppose this then. Thank you. I mean, people have kayaks, canoes, things that can't even take a motor. That's a flaw.
Is there anything further to be said, Selectman Titlebaum?
Yes, I support this article. It wasn't put on here to give grief to people who own kayaks. And by the way, you can always stick the kayak in the backyard. This affects front yard storage. This article was drafted by the building commissioner because he's been taking property owners who have the most unbelievably messy properties in town. He's been actually taking them to housing court because he finds he gets a better result in housing court. However, in housing court, what he was running into was he would go in there and say, these people have 3 unregistered boats, you know, they're collecting water, there are mosquito traps, and this, that, and the other thing. And unless he could prove to the housing court's judge's absolute satisfaction that the conditions on the property represented a public health issue, which is a very high hurdle for anybody to overcome when you're in the housing court, to say that you've got a public health problem. Just the fact that it was messy, the fact that it was cluttered, the fact that it was an eyesore, the fact that these properties are taking away from the property values of the houses that are kept up around them and harming those property values, that was the impetus for this article. Again, if you got kayaks, you can stick them in the backyard. I don't see what the problem with the article is.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Mr. Muniz?
I agree with what Mr. Titlebaum's just said.
Can you speak into the microphone,
I am.
please?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I agree with what he just said, but the way if I'm looking at it correctly, it reads as ungarazed any promises at any time unless so authorized. So it's not just the front yard, it's anywhere. And I don't have a big problem with the article. I just think it should have been defined a little better, eliminating canoes and kayaks from it, or unregistered boats. Not required to be registered under general laws. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman on my right?
Yes, Madam Moderator. Irvin Russell, Precinct 6. And I think that this is a kind of a stretch, and I would impose the fact that everybody should vote against this article, and maybe somebody revamp it or get a little more curtailed in that dominance and exploitation of my privileges. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman on my left?
Jack Silver, Precinct 5. I have nothing but support for this article. Across the street from me, I have a neighbor who has 3 unregistered vehicles in his yard. 2 of them are out front. The yard is a mess. He's got toolboxes. There was even a gas cylinder out there that I noticed. He's got a unregistered camper that's been there for 3 years. I have to walk out my front door every day, look out my front window every day at this mess. So I don't think this is stepping on anybody's feet. I think we should support this, because if you don't support it, then come live at my house and come out the front door every morning.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 11? Seeing no one standing, I will call for a vote. This is a zoning article. It does require a 2/3 vote. So we have before you Article 11 to enact the amendments of Article 5 of the zoning bylaw as printed in your warrant. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. It passes by a majority, uncounted 2/3 vote. Article 12.
Article 12, temporary signs. I move that the town enact the amendments to Article 11 of the zoning bylaw as printed in the warrant.
Have a second? Have a second. To speak to the article, Mr. Barrett, this is another zoning article. We do need a report.
I was going to go buy a lottery ticket. Again, we get the legalese out of the way. Pursuant to Section 5 of the State Zoning Act, Chapter 40A, Wareham Planning Board held a public hearing on March 11, 2019 on the proposed amendments to the Wareham zoning bylaws included in the annual spring town meeting warrant as Article 12. And this is to address some adjustments in the sign bylaw that we have noticed to be a problem, discussing temporary signs, and there's a couple other minor changes that kind of fine-tuning the article. The planning board voted 4-0-0 to support favorable action on this article.
Thank you. May I have a report of the Board of, and vote of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen voted in favor 5-0-0.
May I have the report and the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee recommends approval of this Article 700.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 12? Seeing no one standing, I will call for the vote. Again, this is a zoning article. It requires a 2/3 vote. You're voting to enact the amendments to Article 11 of the zoning bylaw as printed in your warrant. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It's unanimous. Article 6.
Article 6, 2020 Capital Plan. I move that the town vote to authorize the fiscal year 20 capital plan as follows. And Derek, would you like to go through the details?
He just stepped out for 1 second. He will be right in if we can, if you want to stand and take a quick breath or, do you want to do it? Okay, all right. We have a selectman that will, oh, here he comes.
All right. How ironic that the whole capital plans for the sewer department. So if you look at the list, that is what they're looking to do. That is all funded through the enterprise fund within their FY20 budget, which is including the generators and going down through the whole list. And again, they're all funded within the enterprise fund capital line. Thank you.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen recommends approval 5-0-0.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
Yes, the Finance Committee recommends approval of this Article 700.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 6? Seeing no one standing, I will call for a vote on Article 6 to approve the fiscal year 20 capital plan as shown on the screen. Requires majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous. 19. Article 19. May I have a motion, please?
As Article 19, Anderson Field Track, I move that the vote to appropriate from the Community Preservation Undesignated Fund available in the Community Preservation Fund under the category of Recreation, a grant to the Wareham School Department, the sum of $200,000 for the resurfacing of the track, module storage unit, and additional fencing at the Newt Anderson Field Track located on Viking Drive, Wareham.
Do I have a second? I have a second. To speak to the article?
Madam Moderator, I think is Joyce getting up to speak? All right.
Chairman of our school committee?
So I'll just be quiet.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have a new chairman.
We
I'm
do.
sorry. I saw Joyce. To speak to the article, Mrs. Bakayaki.
Certainly, if Derek would like to speak first, go right ahead.
No, I'm fine. Go ahead.
I'll be short. The property that we're talking about is the track at across from the middle school. The school department has submitted an article through the CPC to improve that property. And it is important to note that although the school department is the one who made this request, it is definitely a community space. It's not just a school space. Although it is used by our students every day, it's used by the community every day also. So what we're asking for, there are a couple of different versions of this request. And after meeting with the CPC and going, and talking back and forth about different options that could be done, we decided that this was the best way to go right now. This will allow us to resurface the track, not to replace the track, and to do some other upgrades to fencing and security around the track that desperately needs to be done. So for that reason, we're asking you to support this article tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have the vote recommendation? Did you want to speak? No?
No, I just didn't see it.
Okay. May I have the vote recommendation of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen recommends approval 500.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee does not recommend approval of this article, 070.
Is there anything further to be said on Article 19?
If I may, Madam Operator, excuse me.
You have,
Yes, I'd like to give an explanation as to our vote. As I outlined earlier in another article, the request came before us from the Community Preservation Commission, not directly from the school committee. So we evaluated on what they asked us to evaluate on the 200,000 grant. We were unsure of it. They had some questions about it. So two of us went over and got a tour of, and then also just on an alternate day reviewed the conditions of the field itself. We find these particular requests very warranted. No question about it. However, in looking at the entire field, we feel there are issues that should be made or added to this package. An example is one end of the field, as your back is to the middle school, it floods. It's flooded now. There's drainage ditches that were never taken care of. There's drains down there that are full and unable to drain the water that's there. The field itself in the middle is nothing but dirt. That's where the field hockey plays. As far as the fencing is concerned, maintenance has created a hole in the fence so they can get their vehicles through, even though there's a locked gate already. So some of these issues we feel should be part of a package and do the whole field versus just these particular areas. The track, they have maintenance. We were questioning that also because the track has cracks in it. They've purchased material to fill those cracks but have never filled them. But again, doesn't make any difference. The track is in a certain condition today, but the whole field is in a certain condition, and we felt that it would be part of a package to correct all the problems with that area versus just these few. Thank you.
thank you. Gentleman on my left?
Corey Tripp, Precinct 6. As I agree with you, the entire field needs to be fixed. I do agree with that. But for the time being, the track is in horrendous shape. I was at a track meet the other day with the Wareham High School and watched a young lady from Seekonk step in one of the holes where there's a portion of the track missing and fall and scrape her entire side of her body. My concern is if the field isn't fixed or the track isn't fixed, that we are going to lose the track team altogether, and these student athletes work really hard. And I recommend that not only do you guys go and look at it by yourselves, but maybe you should all come and watch a track meet and watch these kids and watch how much effort they put in and understand that they are the laughingstock of the track world right now. Their track is in horrendous shape while every other schools look amazing. We always wonder why schools choose school choice and go elsewhere. It's because we don't take care of our own. And we don't take care of our schools, and we don't take care of the things that the kids want.
Thank you. On my right?
Ava Rossi, Precinct 5. My son is on the track team, and having been a community member who has used the track on off-school time to both run and walk, and seeing several other members of the community using the track, after having attended several track meets that my son has participated in other districts, our track is severely in disarray, and I highly recommend that you guys do this. The price to resurfacing the track pales in comparison to the liability of a child getting hurt on that track should something occur because it wasn't taken care of.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 19? Ms. Bakayaki?
I just wanted to say that we're very appreciative of the process that we went through with the CPC. We met with them more than once to discuss this project, and it was a little frustrating. I appreciate what Mr. Pigeon has said, that they are in support of a larger project. We all are, but we have to live, with what we have. And had we been given the opportunity to meet with the Finance Committee, we would have been happy to have the same types of conversations that we had with the CPC at those meetings. And so, again, we appreciate support at this point for this project. Thank you.
On my right?
Sandy Slavin, I'm here as the co-chair of CPC. The request came to us for $500,000. In 2006, this body approved $235,000 to redo the track. We were disappointed that it hadn't been maintained as it should have been, which is why we didn't give them a full replacement, but the $200,000, which would allow them to resurface and take care of the nasty cracks that are in there. The school department did say they will be putting up security issues regarding, I believe, cameras and things like that because of the vandalism that is occurring on there, so that is why CPC agreed to the $200,000. Take care of what we have there. We can't continue to hold events on the condition of those tracks, but there was no way we could approve a $500,000 redoing of the track. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 19? On my left?
Anne Marie Burks, Precinct 5. $200,000 to resurface it is a Band-Aid, but right now it sounds like we need the Band-Aid. We don't have funds available for more than that. We're looking at the result of 20 years of level funding. If there's no money for maintenance, it doesn't get done. So now we have to pay.
Thank you. Anything further to be said on Article 19? Seeing no one standing, I will call for the vote. It requires majority vote to appropriate from community preservation the sum of $200,000 for the resurfacing of the track and what is before you on the screen. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous. Article 3.
Madam Moderator, Article 3, compensation of certain appointed officials. I move that the town vote pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 108, to set the compensation of certain elected officials as follows. Town clerk, $70,000. Registrar, $700. Town moderator, $120 per diem. And I won't stand for that.
Do I have a second? I am going to step down and recuse myself, and the deputy moderator is going to take this article since there is a salary for the town moderator included in this article. So.
Can I, did you guys do the vote of the, you did the votes of Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen recommends approval of this Article 500.
And the Board of the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee recommends approval of this Article 800.
Is there anyone that wishes to speak to the article?
This is the annual article that we bring forth every year for these positions.
Seeing no one standing, I will now call for a vote on Article number 3. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. The motion carries by a unanimous vote.
you, Mr. Ashley.
Joe should get more.
Wait a minute, shall we argue over who's going to get more here, right? $1.280? Okay. Thank you, Joe, appreciate that. Next article. Article 8. Just so you know, the town moderator in Falmouth gets $5,000.
Okay, Article 8, Emergency Medical Services Budget. I move that the town vote to approve the amount of $1,340,032 to the Emergency Medical Services Salary and Wages account, $399,089 to the EMS General Expense account, and further, to authorize a sum of money in estimated receipts of the Emergency Medical Services account to be used to offset said appropriation in accordance with MGL Chapter 44, Section 53E.
Have a second? Okay. Speak to the article.
Thank you. This is the annual budget for the emergency medical services. They are an offset receipt, a little bit different than an enterprise fund, but they still, their salaries and expenses are paid for by the revenues that they generate. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a vote recommendation of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen recommends approval of this Article 500.
And the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee recommends approval of this Article 700.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 8? Seeing no one standing, I will call for a vote on the EMS budget. The sums that are shown on the screen, it requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous. 13. Article 13. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $128,000 from the overlay reserve as authorized by the Board of Assessors to fund and complete a state-mandated revaluation of all real estate and personal property in the town.
Have a second? Have a second. To speak to the article?
Thank you. These funds would be coming from the overlay reserve. You used to have to do this every 3 years, but through the Municipal Modernization Act, you now do it through every 5 years. And I appreciate the Director of Assessing and the Board of Assessors for releasing these funds to help pay for it.
Thank you. May I have the vote and recommendation of the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen recommends approval of this Article 500.
And the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee voted 700.
That's in favor.
In favor.
In favor.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Is there anything further to be said on Article 13? Seeing no one standing, I will call for a vote. It requires a majority vote, and it's to fund the mandated real estate and personal property reval for the sum of $128,000. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous. 22. Article 22. This is a petition article. Petitioner.
Donna Foley, Precinct 1. To see if the town will add the following agriculture regulations to the town of Wareham. Shellfish regulations. Section 4, general commercial regulations. Any person filing an application to the town of Wareham for the intent to establish a commercial for-profit oyster farm or any other commercial aquacultural grant, license, or permit shall, at the applicant's expense, give written notice thereof by certified mail, return receipt requested, or hand-delivered to all property owners and neighborhoods associations at their mailing addresses shown on the most recent tax list of the assessors within 1,000 feet of any point along the perimeter of the requested licensed area. The notice of intent to abutters shall have enclosed a copy of the aquacultural grant or permit application or request. NOI notice shall contain a narrative that states the overall shellfish population, the aesthetic and environmental impacts of the commercial harvesting of shellfish on marine life and residential abutters, and the common name of the marine location and neighborhood, and the time, date, and location of the required public hearing. Abutter notification must be received by abutters 14 days prior to holding said public hearing. A copy of the notice mailed or delivered with green cards shall be filed with the Board of Selectmen.
Do I have a second? I have a second. To speak to your article?
This article proposed as a policy addition to the incorporated into the Wareham commercial shellfish regulations. It does not require a vote or approval from the state legislature because it is not a charter change. It need only be adopted by the selectmen after a vote at the town meeting. This policy will safeguard Wareham homeowners affected by acres of bags and cages floating on the surface of our abutting waterways. As with building permits or other changes to neighborhoods, the town of Wareham requires that a written notice of intent be sent to abutters. It is common practice because not all residents frequent town hall or get the newspaper. Commercial aquacultural permits should also be required to file a written notice of intent to abutters. Written abutter notification is a must when the peaceful enjoyment of our homes, navigable and recreational waters will be disrupted due to the placement of a commercial marine farming development abutting our neighborhoods. The towns of Marion, Fairhaven, and Plymouth all require written abutter notification in their town's commercial shellfish regulations. For example, Mattapoisett Oyster Farm regulation policy requires all abutters within 1,000 feet radius be notified. At present, Mattapoisett has 10 acres of oyster farms, and Wareham has 70 acres and is granting more every year. As you can see on the map, oyster farms are surrounded by water and marshland. Marked in black is a 1,000-foot radius around the outermost perimeter of a 1-acre farm. The applicant was granted up to 5 acres. This would have completely covered half of Marks Cove. This policy enacted will capture a very limited amount of directly affected upland homes, even very densely populated neighborhoods. For example, in the case of Marks Cove, cited only 40 homes in Cremisa and none in the Swifts Beach area would have been officially notified, even though hundreds would be severely impacted. It will not create any more of a hardship for the town employees collecting the data of the applicant that is done routinely for building or other town permits. This citizens petition policy has no cost to the taxpayers. All the costs associated with this written notice of intent to the abutters will be borne by the applicant applying for the commercial grant. We are not opposed to aquaculture. However, as abutters, we should be officially notified. As more and more oyster farms pop up in our surrounding waters, we want a abutter notification to ensure the placement of these business operations adhere to strict commercial shellfish policy regulations, allow abutting residents a voice, and are sited in areas where their impact will have the least detrimental effect on the property values of our homes, the wildlife, birds, aquatic creatures, whether endangered or not.
30 seconds.
The inhabitant of these sensitive areas and recreational and open space uses of water, marshes, and abutting neighborhoods. I urge you to please vote yes on Article 22.
Thank you. May I have the vote and recommendation of the Board of Selectmen?
The Board of Selectmen does not recommend approval of this article, 050.
May I have the vote and recommendation of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee does not recommend approval of this Article 160.
Gentleman on my right?
Yes, Herb Williams, Precinct 1. I do support yes on this article. I'm a homeowner in Marks Cove and belong to Cremisa Park Improvement Association. Our homeowners association was not notified of the oyster farm proposed in 2015. We were blindsided but when the town issued agricultural grant number 1. The 2017 newspaper notice was ambiguous and did not give the area's common name or the description of the territory, which is required by state law, Chapter 130, Section 60, and was not followed by the town in the newspaper. After bringing this discrepancy to the attention of the town, that just listing the latitude and longitude location is impossible for a layperson or abutters to identify, we thought the town would comply. 2 weeks ago, Grant 2 was issued. Again, no area or territory was listed in the town's required newspaper notice. The location was just listed as latitude and longitude lines. Article 22 will give fair notification to abutters. It will demonstrate the transparency by the town. It will give an easy, identifiable description of the area and the territory. This is common sense, a simple courtesy to abutters impacted by oyster farm sites. A notice of intent regarding agriculture must be required policy in Wareham's commercial shellfish regulations as it is in all the other surrounding towns to participate. After reading the article in the April 18th edition of the Wareham
30
Week,
seconds.
where selectmen approved an oyster hatchery in Weewantic River, it was evident this is a growing business in Wareham, and the town is encouraging applications. And I'd like to add, this also will affect the boating in places like Marks Cove and Swift's Beach, Parkwood. You're going to affect your boating, so if you want it, you don't want to boat anymore, fine.
Gentleman on my left.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Bill Heaney, Precinct 1. Why did the selectmen vote no?
To answer the question?
It's our understanding at this point in time that the harbor master has drafted notice regulations that are currently being reviewed by the Division of Marine Fisheries that wouldn't be quite as costly to applicants as the 1,000-foot setback being sought here. So we voted not to recommend this article because we'd like to see what the harbor master brings forward as far as regulations. Remember, the selectmen sort of stand as the licensing authority for all matters shellfish. So if he proposes articles to us, or not an article, but just a regulation to us as far as the notice, and we vote to adopt it, it becomes part of the entire application process. It's not something that has to go through town meeting for us to do.
Why did the Finance Committee vote no?
To answer the question? Should you choose? Finance Committee.
So basically, we had a lengthy meeting with Gary, and he communicated the same information to us that he had that paperwork in process, and we were just waiting for an approval. So we felt that it was best for us to defer to Gary's judgment in this case.
Okay, can I defer to Gary at some point and then come back?
Do you have a particular question for Mr. Buckminster? If you have a particular question, you can ask that question, and I can ask him to answer that particular question.
I don't have a particular question. I'd like to hear what he has to say, but
Well,
I
I
don't.
see him in line, so I think you're going to hear from him.
Okay.
On my left was up next, Ms. Capariccio.
Judy Capriccio, Precinct 1. I've been a lifelong resident of Swift Beach. I've played in Mark Coves my whole life, going cohogging, swimming, etc. So I was really surprised when I read in the newspaper that this aquaculture farm has been here. I think business is great for Wareham, so is aquaculture, but how is this going to affect me or anyone else who has always gone there shellfishing themselves, or I have a small boat and I go in and out of there? Am I going to be able to do this anymore? That's all I wanted to know, and then I have a second part of the question.
To answer Mrs. Capariccio's question about whether or not it would impede her going in to do shellfishing or go in with her boat. Mr. Buckminster, if you care to just answer that question.
We have numerous grant holders in town, and they are very accommodating to navigation, to fishing, to working with neighbors. Not in my backyard is very powerful. This is powerful throughout the state, but the Commonwealth is very supportive of aquaculture. So you're going to have cages. You're allowed to pass through the waters. There's some clauses in the state laws that protect the shellfish areas. So if there is damage caused, people that do cause it are liable, but they are navigable.
Is that no longer a place to go shellfishing if you live in Wareham and have a shellfish license?
If it's within the boundaries of the shellfish grant, you cannot shellfish in there.
So that's 1,000 feet. It's 1,000 feet boundary, which seems
That's
to be...
1,000-foot abutter notice.
Okay,
Yep.
so is there still a place? That's all. My question is, can you still go in there cohogging with your cohog license?
I don't want to back and
Yeah.
forth. If you have a particular question, you go through the moderator.
That's the question.
I will direct it to who should answer it. Please state your question again.
I felt it wasn't answered. I just wanted to know if I could go cohogging in there still.
To answer the question, can she go cohogging in an area that has a shellfish grant?
Outside of the boundaries of the shellfish grant, you can cohog. So you
So
can
is
be
that
on the
square?
lines.
I would like to ask a question. Is that square where the grant is? That square that you see?
Shellfish grant is not existent.
Time is up, Mrs. Capariccio. I believe
It was proposed.
you were next. Mrs. Jordan
Yes.
was next.
Excuse me.
No problem.
Marilyn Jordan, Precinct 1, Sippacan Road. This is the second time the citizens petition is being brought before town meeting. In April of 2018, a motion sent it back for further study. A temporary moratorium was subsequently requested by the harbor master and agreed upon by the selectmen. That moratorium was lifted in October of 2018. We were told that the residents' concerns would be included in the discussions reviewing the aquaculture policy regulations and abutter notifications. That never happened. Apparently, it got buried when it got sent back for further study. Now a year has passed, and in that time, more and more aquaculture and related businesses are being approved. No proposal has been made by the town to adopt a notice of intent policy for abutters. No lists have been published in the newspapers reviewing the current aquacultural sites or what spots are being considered as good candidates for future permits. Acres of floating bags and metal oyster cages will continue to be placed in our coves, bays, and rivers, privatizing our shoreline without abutter notification. The petitioners,
30 seconds.
The petitioners in good faith have compromised from a quarter of a mile radius down to 1,000 feet, but there has been no good faith policy proposed by the town. The town continues to kick this can down the road, and I hope town meeting voters will bring reason and fairness to the abutters and vote yes on Article 22.
Thank you. Gary first. Mr. Buckminster?
Actually, being here, I've been with the town since 1995. Originally, we had 100 acres listed on our private aquaculture list. We were down to 63 with the proposal of, I believe it was 6.28 acres about 3 years ago, maybe a little less. And then we also had a 2-acre parcel that was also proposed. We have no aquaculture licenses right now being accepted because the moratorium is in effect. And we are waiting for the state to review the 16 pages of aquaculture regulations that I've drafted, which will go before the Division of Marine Fisheries, Town Council, the selectmen in a public hearing, which people are able to view, discuss, and adopt if the selectmen so choose. I'm asking you to not pursue this. We need to drop this article. This up here, this shellfish grant is within a recreational zone, and part of my proposal is any area that is designated for shellfishing for recreational purposes only will not accept aquaculture. So this area, which actually goes from, I want to say it's Seahorse Lane off of Kermesit, over to the Swift's Neck boat ramp, is all determined as recreational only. And I have it in the regulations, which I'll be proposing, that will not allow aquaculture farms such as this to go into these areas.
Thank you.
Ditto.
Gentleman on my right.
Yeah, Dan Butler, Precinct 1. I have first a question and then a comment. And my question is, it would seem that it would be appropriate that if we are encouraging commercial aquaculture within the town of Wareham, within the waters of Wareham, that that would be spelled out very clearly in a very defined way within our master plan. And so my question is it spelled out very clearly within our master plan so that citizens of Wareham would know in advance where these types of commercial operations might be contemplated in the future?
To answer the question, if anyone cares to. I believe the question is the aquaculture is part of...
Is it clear in our, do we have a master plan that spells out clearly where these types of commercial aquaculture operations might be considered in the future?
To answer the question, Mr. Buckland?
Ken Buckland, Town Planner.
You need to speak right into the microphone.
The master plan is not specific as to the location of shellfish grants. That is in the purview of the Natural Resources Department.
Okay, then I have two comments. My first comment would be that I think the master plan should include such clearly defined notification to all Wareham residents that these types of operations are being contemplated in specific designated locations within Wareham waters. And my second comment is I support this citizens petition. I think notification to abutters out to 1,000 feet is perfectly reasonable, and it's unreasonable to blindside the citizens of Wareham, as apparently did occur, with this type of a thing in the future. So I do support strongly the citizens petition.
Time. Gentleman on my left, Mr. Flaherty.
Thank you. I commend the harbor master working with the state and drafting new rules and such. If this were to pass tonight, would those new rules, could the selectmen vote on those new rules and just supersede this, or how, would they have to go to town meeting?
To answer the question only.
Procedurally, I believe that if this passes, then anything that would be devised and presented to the Board of Selectmen would be moot, as far as any notice provisions.
So couldn't the selectmen just submit an article to supersede this one?
To answer the question.
In theory.
To town council, please.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Rich Bowen, Town Council, through you to the previous speaker. There you are, thanks. Here's the issue. The Board of Selectmen as licensing authority is governed by the notice requirements of Chapter 130, Section 60. The citizens petition isn't really a bylaw, and I think that were it treated as a bylaw and if it were sent up to the Attorney General for review and approval, it would probably be rejected because it's preempted by Chapter 130, Section 60. So I think if town meeting were to vote to approve this, it would be advisory in nature to the Board of Selectmen as it was developing its own set of regulations.
So I guess maybe we won't know until they actually, rule on that and the chips fall where they may, right?
Well, I suspect that this is just an advisory vote and that the Board of Selectmen, as it puts together a set of regulations, may or may not take into account the guidance of town meeting.
Thank you. Again, I, with all due respect to the harbor master, we just had it just came up when we were discussing, putting these off to further study, and that's how things don't get done. And I think these people that have put the petition forth have worked in good faith, and they've waited long enough. And I guess to get the ball rolling, I'm okay with it. And if the harbor master comes up with something better and it can supersede, or if the if selectmen can put another article on, I'd be okay with that too.
On my right.
Good evening, Madam Moderator. My name is Jackie Nichols. I'm the Director of Assessing. I just want to make the point that we had the same discussion last year, and the citizens brought up the same point again this year, saying that there would be no additional cost to the town, and I want to again, as I did last year, say that that simply is not true. Doing a butters list from somewhere out in the ocean is not something that we can do easily. We don't have points of reference, and our GIS system cannot handle the way that we usually do a butters list from the points in the ocean. Just can't be done. Talking about some of the other towns and the other shellfish regulations, I did speak to the harbor master in Mattapoisett, and their shellfish regulations that require a butter notification have not yet been tested. They haven't had to do that, and I don't know how they're going to do that, and they haven't discussed that with me again. We don't have the GIS infrastructure for us to be able to do that the same way that we do any other abutters list, which is a computerized process. We would have to do this by hand, and depending
30 seconds.
Depending on where this is, that could be hundreds of properties that we would have to list out by hand. So that is an additional cost to the town in employee time when we are stretched to the limit as it is. And I'd like that to be pointed out. And also, Gary has put together some comprehensive regulations that will encompass much more than this, and I think we should let that go.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're approaching the hour of 10 o'clock, and our rules say that we can't go beyond the hour of 10 o'clock. We can either accept a motion to complete this article and then return tomorrow night, or if your choice is to stay, we have about 7 articles. So if you would just take your cards and just give me a sense of, do you want to just do this one article to complete this, and then if that's the case, I would accept a motion for that. So how many just want to stay for this one article? How many would be interested in completing town meeting tonight? Okay, it's close. I'm going to take a vote, and I know it's getting late. All those in favor of staying to complete this one article beyond the hour of 10, if the tellers would come forward and please count. So this is just to stay beyond the hour of 10 o'clock for this one article. So I can just now take a vote to want to stay and compare the two? Yeah.
But if it's to stay, then we'll need a motion.
We'll need a motion.
If it's to go, motion to return till
Yep.
7 tomorrow.
And then come back. Mr. McGonnell?
9.
Mr. Gomes?
5.
9?
5.
5. On my left.
Center, 36.
Okay. How many want to stay and finish? If the tellers would count, please.
No Chicago vote. See, you got a lot of votes up on the stage.
This is, I'm just doing a survey to see how many want to stay and complete all 7 articles tonight. On my right. 25.
2.
2. 5.
11.
11. So we have 57 who want to just go beyond the hour of 10 for this one article, and 43. So I would need a motion to go beyond the hour of 10 o'clock just to complete this one article. All those in favor, please say aye. Motion has passed. So anyone opposed? Okay, didn't think so. Okay, so we're just going to stay and complete this article, and then we will have to adjourn the meeting until tomorrow night. I believe Mr. Haney was up next. And Mrs. Jordan, you have used your time, unfortunately.
Unfortunately is right.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just have 2 questions. One's for the Harbor Master, and that question is, did I understand correctly that we're not approving any additional shellfish grants while we're waiting for his proposed regulations to be approved?
Currently, the moratorium is in place. The aquaculture site that they did reference that was recent is a hatchery. They only grow seed to a certain size, and then they sell it to aquaculture sites like we have in town.
So we're not going to have any new grants during this moratorium while we're waiting for your for the approval for your regulations?
No, we're not.
Okay. Second question is for town council, and that is, did I understand you correctly that any action taken tonight is advisory to the Board of Selectmen and not binding on anything?
Madam Moderator, through the previous speaker, I believe that to be the case.
Okay, so no matter what we do tonight, it's just going to be advice to the Board of Selectmen, which they've probably gotten a hint of already, and so it really doesn't matter if we vote this up or down. Is that a fair statement?
Advice is important.
Pardon me?
Advice is important.
Okay, so
Advice is always important.
So if we vote in the affirmative for this, that's the advice that goes to the Board of Selectmen when they're reviewing the regulations from the Harbor Master. Is that a fair understanding?
Mr. Tropiano, would you care to answer that question?
Yeah, a fair understanding. There's a lot of things in this that we would probably have to look at. The fact that it has longitude and latitude, which I don't know if you know what it means. If I told you, you wouldn't know where it was.
Just to answer
So we
the-
need to
answer the
define that a
question,
little
I'll
more
wait.
as well. There's lots of stuff like that, yeah.
And then I'll come back.
Okay, so So a positive result here is advisory to the Board of Selectmen, and that's always good.
10 seconds, Mr. Haney.
Thank you.
Selectman Tropiano.
So I would just, funny because he led me to the question. There's a lot of things in this that need to be different than they are. Latitude and longitude, if I told you latitude whatever and longitude whatever, you'd say, well, where the heck is that? I mean, you really need to have more of a defined map or something to make an informed decision about where these things are. And there's some other things in there that should be different too. And that's why Gary has worked so hard to try to put something together, get it approved so that we can have something to look at. I mean, yes, you can vote this in, and yes, it's an advisory, and yes, we pay attention to that, but we're already paying attention to it. We already know that people have been interested. They came 2 years ago with this, if I'm not mistaken, might have been 2.5 or so years ago, and we were concerned at that time when it came before us, and that's why we asked Gary to look into this, and Gary immediately says, I've been working on it anyway. So we've been working on it. It's just, the wheels of government sometimes turn a little slowly, but we heard you. So it's really not really a necessity thing, but it's going to happen one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman on my left.
Corey Tripp, Precinct 6. Couple statements. According to the article, it's saying that the people applying for the permits are to pay for all costs to notifications. So even if the town is putting forth the list, they can back charge. No?
No.
Second is that you say you don't have the capability to say, the assessor says they don't have the capability to say who's within that 1,000-yard radius because of latitude and longitude. I do this on a regular basis with a program free of charge. It's called Google Earth. You type in the lat, the long, it puts a drop within 2 feet of whatever the lat and long is. Then there's a measurement tool at the top where you can easily put a circle, just as you see up there. Yep, just like that.
There was no question. He doesn't have a question.
And I do it all the time, doing 2C surveys with my line of work, and it's very simple.
Thank you. Is there anything further on my right?
Sandy Slavin, Precinct 3. This is a butter notifications. For what committees? For what hearings? May I ask?
To answer the question?
This would be for people seeking to establish new shellfish grants before the Board of Selectmen or to expand on existing grants.
So this is just for the hearing for the selectmen. It does not include Conservation Commission or anybody else that has to permit this type of work or this site? Because I would not want to see the proposed business owner having to send out all these notifications for conservation and then all over again for the selectmen's public hearing. What I did hear the assessor saying, it's awful hard to determine who sits within this radius, and they want associations to be included in the butter notification. How does the assessor come up with an association that's within the 1,000-foot radius? I'm just asking the question. If that's a 1,000-foot radius, then it's the diameter of, is that the whole thing? 2,000 feet?
Excuse me, we don't have conversations between voters. If she's got a question, direct it to the moderator. We'll see if we can get you an answer.
It says a 1,000-foot radius.
You have 30 seconds.
That's it, just trying to think how big that circle is. Thank you.
And the gentleman standing, you've already used your allotted time. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to...
I'm sorry, you used your 2 minutes. I'm sorry.
I can't answer
I'm
her
sorry.
question? I'd answer her question. I'm not talking about anything else. All right?
Nope. Okay, I see no one else standing. Article 22 will now come before you. Requires a majority vote. The motion before you, Matt, can you put the motion back up? It's quite lengthy. and is to see if the town will enact the aquaculture regulation to the Town of Wareham Shellfish regulations as appears on the screen. It requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Article 22 fails. I now will accept a motion to adjourn until Tuesday
Madam Moderator,
night.
point of order, I request a vote count on that.
I don't see 7 people standing. I now see 7 standing, so we will take a hand count. If the tellers will come forward. All those in favor of Article 22, please hold your cards up. On my right,
3. 4.
that was 8.
Okay, correct. You can put them down. Thank you.
14, 1-4.
Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your cards. On my right,
31, 3-1. 4.
on my left, 11.
Center is 27.
27, 27.
27, 27.
There are 29 in the affirmative and 73 in the negative. The motion fails. I will now accept a motion to adjourn the meeting
So moved.
to tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock in the high school auditorium.
So moved.
And I have a motion. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Oh, Lordy. Sorry we couldn't get it done.